Chapter 1225. He didn't lower his voice, and his loud voice attracted a lot of attention. Obviously, they were also very curious about this question. Chu Liyue smiled faintly. The Azure Cloud leaderboard is filled with heroes. I'm just a new student, what can I use to compete? Shuoxing clicked his tongue. I haven't seen you for a few days, but you're much more humble than before. Actually, Chu Liyue wasn't too arrogant after coming to Lingxiao College. Otherwise, she wouldn't have only applied for the celestial physician position. However, she would always inexplicably bump into many things, causing her to become famous in the short span of 2 months. She had become a celebrity in the entire academy. Seeing Chu Liyue's expression, Luo Shishir was a little surprised. Chu Yu, are you really not going to try? Because of his relationship with Senior Rong Xiu, many people in the college were actually suspicious of him. There were also many people who secretly mocked him. And the examination at the beginning of the month was undoubtedly the best opportunity for Chu Yu to prove his strength. But looking at him, he didn't seem to care. Chu Liyue paused. It depends. She couldn't really not go for the examination, that would only attract more attention. But based on yesterday's situation, as long as she got close, she would definitely summon the Azure Cloud leaderboard. She had to think of a way to hide it. The examination went on as usual. The entire Qingming Square was very lively. Chu Liyue walked to the celestial physician position and waited quietly. There weren't many people here, so Chu Liyue's presence was very conspicuous. Some people would occasionally look in her direction. Chu Liyue turned a deaf ear to them. At this moment, Elder Bo Yen finally waved his sleeve and summoned the Azure Cloud leaderboard. Wang! A tyrannical wave came. Chu Liyue's heart skipped a beat, and she looked up. The crowd was quiet for a moment, and then they all looked up. Some were nervous, some were looking forward to it, and more were full of battle intent and eager to try. The examination at the beginning of the month officially begins. Elder Bo Yen gave the order. Everyone quickly got busy. However, Chu Liyue didn't move. He only raised his head slightly and looked at the ascension rankings. Hundreds of names were neatly arranged on the black wall, emitting a lustrous glow. It was divine and powerful, and it carried a tyrannical pressure that could not be ignored. She looked at the top. That place was still covered in darkness. Almost no one knew that her name was hidden under the seal. Chu Liyue slowly clenched his fists in his sleeves. This time, compared to the first time they met 2 months ago, his state of mind was completely different. Chu Yu, what are you looking at? Zhong Sun walked over and stood beside Chu Liyue, following her line of sight. A look of understanding appeared in his eyes as he smiled. You still want to be on the list, right? He had overheard the conversation between Chu Liyue and Luo Shishir. Just as he had said, this teenage boy was the most hot-blooded of all. Even if he said that he didn't dare or didn't want to, there was still an unconcealable desire in his heart. Chu Liyue smiled and didn't say anything. At this moment, a cry of surprise suddenly came from the side. Chu Liyue and Zhong Sun both turned to look. It seems like someone won the Xian Master competition. Zhong Sun muttered. Chu Liyue looked at the familiar face behind the crowd and narrowed his eyes. Lin Qifei. At this moment, he was standing in a competition venue with a pale face and a forehead full of sweat. The young man opposite him was sitting on the ground, spitting out blood and looking dispirited. There was a chessboard between the two of them. She didn't need to look to know that this was a match between Xian Masters, and the winner was Lin Qifei. Everyone was also shocked by this unexpected outcome and discussed animatedly. He won. He actually won. The other party is a famous figure on the Ascension rankings. Doesn't this mean that he replaced him and ascended the Ascension rankings? I remember that he's only ranked 98th on the Xian Master ranking. There are still many people competing for this ranking. Isn't it normal for someone to win? You don't know about this. The one who just won the competition is called Lin Qifei. He's only been in the academy for 2 months and is a true freshman. Freshman? Really? There aren't many people who can ascend the ascension rankings after such a short time in the academy. I've never heard of this Lin Qifei before, but I didn't expect him to be so powerful. Lin Qifei didn't seem to care about the surrounding voices and cupped his hands at the other party. Thank you for going easy on me, senior brother. The young man's face was red and white, and he was extremely embarrassed. Going easy on me? I went all out. I didn't give in at all. In this battle, he had lost completely. He forced himself to stand up. Junior brother, you don't have to be humble. I'm inferior. With that, his face burned even more, and he quickly turned to leave. An elder in charge of supervising the assessment chuckled. You're Lin Qifei, right? You're indeed young and promising. Congratulations. With that, he waved his sleeve, and the young man's name on the ascension rankings gradually disappeared and was replaced by Lin Qifei's name. Lin Qifei heaved a sigh of relief when he saw his name. He cupped his hands at the elder and smiled. Thank you, elder. Why are you thanking me? If you want to thank someone, you should thank yourself. It's because you're outstanding enough that you can ascend the ascension rankings in such a short time. That elder clearly admired Lin Qifei and patted him on the shoulder. Continue to cultivate well in the future. Strive to reach a higher level. Lin Qifei responded respectfully. He was neither servile nor overbearing. His humble and reserved manner won the praises of many of the elders beside him. They had seen countless people and had sharp eyes. Lin Qifei was extremely talented. Even in the entire academy, he was definitely one of the best. Most importantly, his personality was also good. He was calm and not arrogant. As long as everything went smoothly, his future would definitely be bright. Lin Qifei left the arena. Many people in the surroundings looked at him with envy. There aren't many people who can ascend the ascension rankings within 3 months of entering the academy, right? I don't know about anything else. I only know that he's the first person to make it onto the rankings among the new students. I've always said that Chuyu was the strongest among the new students. Looking at it now, that might not be the case. I think this Lin Qifei is better. In addition, Luo Yanlin's sister, Luo Shishir, is also extremely talented. I think it won't be long before she can ascend the rankings as well. Isn't she much better than that Chuyu? I'd like to see if that Chuyu can ascend the rankings today. All sorts of voices filled the entire arena. Qifei. You're good. As soon as Lin Qifei came down, a strong man came over from the side. I already said that you would amaze the world with a single brilliant feat. Sure enough. That Chuyu can't be compared to you at all. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1226. Lin Qifei smiled faintly. His clear eyes were calm, and he looked as aloof as ever. Senior brother is too kind. I'm a mystic cultivator, and he's a celestial physician. There's nothing to compare. He didn't really care about this matter. I just think that kid is too good at bluffing. He's only been in the academy for 2 months, but almost everyone knows about him. Many people say that he's the most outstanding one among the new students, but I don't think so. Just now, I heard quite a few people from the celestial physician side say that Chu doesn't seem to have the heart to compete for the Azure Sky role this time. Most likely, he knows that he's not qualified. He might as well give up. Lin Qifei shook his head. If he really is someone who doesn't live up to his reputation, then Holy Sun. Senior brother Rong Xiu probably wouldn't think so highly of him. Although he didn't have much interaction with Rong Xiu, he had seen that man's grace and bearing at the birthday banquet. To be able to catch Rong Xiu's eye, that Chuyu definitely wasn't someone to be trifled with. I forgot that you're also a member of the tribe under the Yuntian Tower. That youth shrugged and didn't say anything else. However, he still disapproved of Lin Qifei's words. He only thought that Lin Qifei was worried about offending Rong Xiu, so he said that on purpose. Lin Qifei knew that he had misunderstood. His lips moved, but he didn't explain anything in the end. His personality had always been like this. As long as he did his own thing well, he couldn't be bothered to care so much. When he thought of this, he raised his eyes and glanced at the celestial physician's side. There was quite a distance between them, and there were quite a few heads in the middle. He couldn't see much from where he stood, and he could barely make out a tall and slender figure. Even though he could only see half of the person's face, that extraordinary aura made him stand out like a crane in a flock of chickens. It immediately attracted people's attention. That youth stood alone, upright and clean. He raised his head slightly, as if he was looking at the azure sky roll, but also as if he was deep in thought. Lin Qifei took a few glances and retracted his gaze. A faint trace of doubt flashed across his eyes. That person said that she wanted to come to Lingxiao College, but he hadn't seen her until now. He didn't know if she would come or not. The news of Lin Qifei's appearance on the azure sky roll had caused quite a commotion. Many people looked at him curiously after hearing the news. Many of them wanted to see who was the most among the newly recruited students to see. Who was the most of them? Now, Lin Qifei was the first one on the list. If Chuyu couldn't go up, he would inevitably lose some face. And, Lu was at to the two. F. Elder Wanzhang looked at him with a smile. Chuyu, who do you want to challenge? He was asking about the celestial physician on the azure sky roll. In Elder Wanzhang's opinion, his disciple was already a 9th grade celestial physician. Although she couldn't be compared to those at the top of the roll, it wasn't a problem for her to challenge those at the bottom. If it was any other student who had just broken through to become a 9th grade celestial physician, Elder Wanzhang wouldn't be so confident. But this person was Chu Luyue. Everything seemed to be possible. Because her alchemy skills were very smooth and skillful. Although she had just broken through to become a 9th grade celestial physician, she wasn't bad at all. Therefore, Elder Wanzhang was excited. He was waiting to see his disciple get on the azure sky roll. However, Chu Liyue's answer surprised him. Master, do I have to choose? Elder Wanzhang was stunned. Why, you don't want to? Chu Liyue pursed her lips. Based on my current strength, I'm afraid I might not win. So, why don't we wait a little longer? Elder Wanzhang opened his mouth in shock. What was going on? Chuyu really didn't want to challenge the azure sky roll. But he had already broken through to become a 9th grade celestial physician. Moreover, with his talent and spirit energy in this area, he might have a chance to win. But now, you've thought it through. Elder Wanzhang was still in disbelief. In the academy, the azure sky roll was the belief of countless students. They studied and cultivated diligently just so that they could occupy a place in this world. It was fine if they were weaker, but Chuyu obviously had a chance to do it. Why did he reject it? This is a rare opportunity. Elder Wanzhang glanced at the other elders who were standing not too far away, and he looked a little troubled. Chu Liyue's heart skipped a beat. She suddenly remembered what Elder Bo Yen said yesterday. Elder Wanzhang had already spread the news that she had broken through to become a 9th grade celestial physician. As if to confirm her guess, Elder Wanzhang coughed and lowered his voice. Disciple, It's not that I want to make things difficult for you, but I've already made a bet with them. Look. Even if you don't have the confidence to win, why don't you give it a try? Even if I lose, it's not a bad idea to show those old fogies that Chuyu has broken through to the 9th grade. Why would he give up just like that? I'll definitely be mocked when I go back. Chu Luiyue was speechless. Disciple, have you forgotten the promise you made with me? Elder Wanzhang looked at Chu Luiyue with a pleading look. They had made a promise to get on the Azure Sky Roll as soon as possible. Chu Luiyue was silent for a moment. It was indeed a great temptation to have all the herbs she wanted. All right. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 12:27. Hearing Chu Luiyue's answer, Elder Wanzheng was delighted. Which one do you want to challenge? The last batch on the Celestial Physician list are all 9th grade Celestial Physicians. In other words, Chu Luiyue could challenge anyone. Chu Luiyue looked up. I want to challenge senior brother Tang Rui. Tang Rui. Elder Wanzheng followed her gaze and looked over. Yes, the 100th on the Celestial Physician list. Why did this child become more cautious after a few days? Elder Wanzheng stroked his beard. Could it be that she was traumatized by being locked in Min Mountain some time ago? Are you sure it's him? Chu Luiyue nodded slightly. Seeing that she had made up her mind, Elder Wanzheng agreed. So what if I'm ranked 100? Anyway, this was the first time. It was good to have a good start. Tang Rui. Elder Wanzheng looked at a young man in the crowd. He looked a little over 20 years old. He was not tall and had a round body. His face was as white and round as dough. With a smile on his face, he looked very amiable. Greetings, Elder Wanzheng. He was standing at the side, so he naturally heard the master-disciple duo's words clearly. He knew that he had become Chu Luiyue's challenge target. Tang Rui, give Chuyu some advice. Elder Wanzheng said. Tang Rui nodded and said with a smile. Yes. After that, he looked at Chu Luiyue and smiled even more politely. Junior brother Chuyu, please. Chu Luiyue raised her hand. Senior brother Tang Rui, please. Jiuheng Mountain. Halfway up the mountain. Rong Xiao stood in front of the door with his hands behind his back. He looked in the direction of the Donghuang Bell Tower. Although he couldn't see the situation in the Qingming Square from here, he could see the master roll because the Donghuang Bell Tower was tall enough. She went to take the test. A young and childish voice came from inside the room. Although childish, it had its own dignity. It was not to be underestimated. Rong Xiao nodded. As long as she's in the academy, she can't avoid this. Her reputation in the academy had spread, and her every move would be watched. It would be strange if she didn't go to the master role. Dugu Mabao snorted. According to her current strength, wanting to break through that layer of restriction and let her name see the light of day again is simply wishful thinking. But it's her name is her name, and her power. Rong Xiao smiled lightly, turned around, and looked into the house. If you're worried, why don't you do it yourself? Ma Bao snorted. Didn't you already make preparations for the ascension rankings? Is there even a need for me? Rong Xiao smiled noncommittally. It's what I should do. He was too, he love. It's, she. Qingming Square was divided into many small areas as the competition venue. Chu Luiyue and Tang Rui were standing in one of the areas. There were not many people at the Celestial Physician's side, and it was always very spacious. But at this moment, there were many people around the two of them. Other than the Celestial Physician students, many mystic masters and martial artists also ran over. Chu Luiyue rubbed her temples as her head hurt. It seemed that she was really famous in Lingxiao College. Junior brother Chuyu, please. Tang Rui took out the cauldron. Chu Luiyue followed closely behind. The surroundings quieted down. The two of them took out the herbs and put them into the cauldron to refine. Tang Rui had seen Chu Luiyue refining pills before and knew that she wasn't weak, so he didn't dare to underestimate her. From the very beginning, he had put forth 120% of his energy. Chu Luiyue didn't think so much and just started refining pills in an orderly manner. Although she could successfully refine a 9th grade pill with her current strength, she still needed to put in a lot of effort to win this competition. She waved her wrist and put the herbs into the cauldron one by one. Red flames burned fiercely. The unique bitter fragrance of the herbs gradually spread. After watching for a while, Elder Wanjing exclaimed in surprise, This kid didn't seem to be refining the previous pill. If he guessed correctly, he seemed to be planning to refine the essence strengthening pill. Although this essence strengthening pill was also a 9th grade inferior pill, it was better than the previous one in all aspects. Of course, the corresponding requirements were also much higher. This was one of the prescriptions that Elder Wanjing gave Chu Luiyue a few days ago. This kid is too reckless, Elder Wanjing couldn't help but murmur. Chuyu hadn't been in possession of this prescription for long. He might not have fully understood it, but he took it out for the competition. Whether or not he could refine it was still a question, but the competition had already begun, and the bystanders could only wait and see. It wasn't Chu Luiyue's first time refining the essence strengthening pill. When she had just broken through to become a 9th grade celestial physician in her previous life, the first pill she refined was the essence strengthening pill. So, this was one of the pills she was most familiar with. When Elder Wanjing tested her before, she didn't choose this because she didn't want to expose too much. And the prescription of the essence strengthening pill was among the things he sent a few days ago. Now, it was logical for her to refine it again. The prescription had been deeply engraved in her mind. The order of putting in each herb, as well as the strength and time needed to refine it, she could perform it perfectly without even thinking. Her movements were smooth and beautiful. Tang Rui inadvertently raised his head and glanced over, and his heart immediately tightened. This kind of technique, this kind of ease, how did it look like a celestial physician who had just broken through to become a 9th grade celestial physician? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 1228. Many of the onlookers were also shocked. Although the news of Chu Luiyue fusing pills had spread throughout the academy, she was only an 8th grade celestial physician at that time. But now, the strength she displayed was clearly that of a 9th grade martial artist. After a short silence, the crowd became noisy. Is this Chuyu really a 9th grade celestial physician? I've been breaking through for a year, but my technique isn't as smooth as his. Me too. And his control of the fire is also very accurate. How did he refine so many herbs at the same time? After all, he's someone who caught Elder Wanjing's eye. How can his talent be bad? No matter how unpleasant the words of others were, Chuyu didn't care at all and shook them off in minutes. A while ago, when he competed with Lu Zian, he was indeed an 8th grade celestial physician. In such a short time, not only did he break through to 9th grade, but his strength in all aspects has increased so much. Sigh, if only I had half of his talent. The students who were also celestial physicians saw it the clearest. The spiritual energy that Chu Luiyue displayed was indeed incomparable to that of an ordinary person. They had no choice but to admit defeat. With senior brother Rongxiu's personal guidance, it's naturally different. Someone said ambiguously, but this voice was quickly drowned out by the discussion of the crowd. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that Chu Luiyue was indeed capable. There was no doubt that he was a 9th grade celestial physician, and it was very likely that the pills he refined were also quite good. Even if he lost in the end, there wouldn't be so many doubts. Time passed slowly. The martial artist and Xian master assessments were also carried out in an orderly manner. Luo Shishir and Zhuxing passed smoothly, especially Luo Shishir, who improved rapidly and had already broken through to the middle of 9th grade. Although Luo Yanming's performance was not bad, there was already Lin Qifei in front of her, which instantly dimmed the light of the others. Even Luo Yanlin had to admit that this newcomer, Lin Qifei, was indeed shockingly talented. Compared to others, he was not inferior. After the assessment, Luo Shishir and the others also went to the celestial physician's side to watch the match between Chu Luiyue and Tang Rui. The atmosphere became more and more tense. Everyone quieted down as they silently watched the scene before them. It was as if their hearts were being hung up. Wang! A ripple came out from Tang Rui's medicinal cauldron. Many people's eyes lit up. Tang Rui was the first to form the pill. Within the medicinal cauldron, a round medicinal pill had already condensed. Following the roasting of the flames, the medicinal fragrance also became more and more intense. Sensing this movement, Chu Liuyue's eyebrows twitched slightly. He raised his head to take a look, and a glimmer of light flashed through his eyes. This aura, middle 9th grade. Suddenly, an exclamation came from the crowd. That's a level 9 mid-grade medicinal pill. Everyone was in an uproar. Tang Rui had been hanging at the 100th place on the Azure Cloud Roll for some time, and his alchemy level had basically remained at the same level. Unexpectedly, he was already able to refine a level 9 mid-grade medicinal pill. Just relying on this alone was enough to make his ranking continue to move up a lot. He's hiding his strength. Someone suddenly sighed with understanding. I really didn't expect that Tang Rui, who usually looks so amiable, had already broken through in secret. When Tang Rui heard this, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He was indeed able to refine a level 9 mid-grade medicinal pill long ago, but for various reasons, he had never revealed it to the public. Even on the Azure Cloud Roll, he only let himself hang at the 100th place and didn't continue to move up. Originally, he wanted to wait until he could refine a level 9 mid-grade medicinal pill or a higher level medicinal pill before officially challenging it. He didn't expect to be chosen by Chu Luiyue to participate in such a competition. In fact, if he hadn't seen Chu Liuyue's skillful alchemy technique just now, he didn't intend to reveal his true strength. But now, in order to stabilize his ranking, he had to go all out. Chu Yu will definitely lose this time. Although the level 9 mid-grade medicinal pill is only a small level higher than the level 9 mid-grade medicinal pill, there's a huge gap between the two. To cross it is extremely difficult. Looking at Tang Rui's skillful appearance, he should have broken through for a while, but that Chu Yu seems to have just ascended the level 9 celestial physician steps not long ago. What's there to compare? Isn't this bullying? Haha. Don't forget one thing, to be able to make Tang Rui show his true strength, it means that the opponent is enough to make him vigilant. And this person is Chu Yu. That was only a 16-year-old youth. For a moment, the way everyone looked at Chu Luiyue changed again. After Elder Wanzheng was surprised, he was relieved. Tang Rui's strength was stronger than before, and the winner of this competition was probably already decided. After all, Chu Yu was refining a level 9 mid-grade medicinal pill. However, as long as his disciple could successfully refine a level 9 medicinal pill, nothing else mattered. He thought silently in his heart. Disciple, don't let me down. At this moment, Chu Luiyue suddenly stopped moving, took out a few medicinal herbs from the universe ring, and put them in the medicinal cauldron one by one. What's that? Elder Wanzheng was stunned for a moment, and subconsciously moved forward to take a look. But with a hurried glance, he could barely recognize that those seemed to be medicinal herbs. But, why did Chu Yu suddenly put these things in? In the prescription, he didn't write these herbs. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1229. Based on his understanding of Chu Yu, this was definitely not a mistake in remembering the prescription or putting in the wrong herbs. The only explanation was that Chu Yu had changed the prescription himself. What was this kid thinking? Elder Wanjing could not help but grind his teeth. Prescriptions of this level were all extremely complicated. Even if the dosage of one of the herbs was changed, it could lead to the failure of refining the pill, let alone changing the prescription and adding in several herbs. His lips trembled, and he swallowed the words in his throat with great difficulty. Now, he could only wait and see. Not only Elder Wanjing, but many other celestial physicians present also noticed that something was wrong. Chu Yu is planning to refine the energy cultivation pill, right? But why did he put in the green lotus seed just now? Not only that. The 4 herbs he put in just now were not in the prescription. I really don't know what he's trying to do. With Elder Wanjing and Senior Rong Xiu's personal guidance, logically speaking, he shouldn't have made such a low-level mistake, right? Look at his calm expression, it's obvious that he did it on purpose. Many people were puzzled. Regardless of their level, they all understood that the prescription could not be changed at will, let alone in such a tense battle. This Chu Yu's guts were truly abnormally big. Some people secretly shook their heads. The herbs used in the energy cultivation pill are extremely mild. When a cultivator takes it, it can strengthen their foundation, stabilize their mind, and benefit their qi. But the herbs that Chu Yu put in just now were extremely strong. Isn't this clearly going to destroy the pill? I think there's no point in continuing this competition. Unfortunately, I thought that his performance was good just now. But changing the prescription at the last minute is really a big mistake. Some people were whispering. Obviously, they had already lost hope in Chu Luyue. Hearing those words, Luo Shishir's heart hung in the air. Although she was not a celestial physician, she knew such common knowledge. As a 9th-grade celestial physician, Chu Yu definitely knew this, but why did he do it? Shuoxing shook his head regretfully. I think Chu Yu is going to lose this round. Luo Shishir pursed her lips. Perhaps he has his own ideas. He has just become a 9th-grade celestial physician. How can he change prescriptions at will? Although Shuoxing had always felt that Chu Yu was extremely talented, prescriptions were the foundation of a celestial physician's alchemy. Luo Shishir was silent for a moment and looked at the young man on the field. He stood tall and straight with one hand on top of the cauldron, controlling the temperature of the crimson flame inside. His other hand was still continuously putting in the remaining medicinal herbs. He looked calm and composed. I don't think he changed the prescription all of a sudden, Luo Shishir murmured. Looking at Chu Yu's smooth and natural appearance, it was as if he should have placed those medicinal herbs in. Shuoxing shrugged. That group of celestial physicians already said that he was refining the energy pill. There were many people who knew about this prescription, and they all said that Chu Yu had changed the prescription himself. Were they all wrong? Luo Shishir did not say anything else. Seeing her expression, Shuoxing's heart moved. He knew that she was worried about Chu Yu, so he comforted her. Sigh, you don't have to be too worried. After all, this is only the first round, and the opponent is a senior on the Azure Sky roll. Even if he loses, it won't be a big deal. After all, everyone can see that he is indeed a 9th-grade celestial physician. Luo Shishir wanted to say something, but stopped. Although she said that, there were many people in the academy who were waiting to see Chu Yu make a fool of himself. If he really lost, then, not only would he be ridiculed, but he would also implicate Senior Rong Xiu and Elder Wanjing. Would Chu Yu really not care about winning or losing this round? No matter what the others said, Chu Luyue did not take it to heart. The reason why she put in so many herbs was actually because she was following her own prescription. Yes, she had previously improved the prescription of the energy pill. Celestial Physician had perfected the prescription of every pill after countless attempts. The amount of each medicinal herb, the method of extraction, the control of the flame, and even the order in which it was put in had strict requirements. Once one made a mistake, it could lead to the failure of refining the pill. Of course, Chu Luiyue would not joke about such things. She waved her wrist lightly and finally put in the last medicinal herb for extraction. After all the medicinal herbs were prepared, it was time to form the pill. Chu Luiyue took a deep breath and urged the force in her body to surge out crazily. Boom! The flames in the cauldron suddenly rose. All the medicinal herbs were gathered together. The medicinal herbs he put in are too strong, and it is extremely difficult to merge with the other medicinal herbs. This time, I'm afraid he won't even be able to form the pill. A low murmur of discussion came from the crowd. Some people were already bored and turned to leave. However, at this moment, a violent collision sound suddenly came from Chu Luiyue's cauldron. Dong! The sound was loud and heavy, and it spread far and wide. Many people's expressions changed. Was this about to succeed? Sure enough, in the next moment, they saw a perfectly round pill appear in the red flames. A rich medicinal fragrance spread out. Elder Wanjing took a deep breath, and his eyes lit up. This aura. It was indeed the aura of a successfully refined origin-enhancing pill. Moreover, there was a different fragrance faintly hidden in it, which made the entire origin-enhancing pill smell even more fragrant. In an instant, the fragrance entered the lungs, and the whole body felt comfortable. His whole person seemed to be much more energetic. Elder Wanzhang looked at Chu Luiyue with shining eyes. The medicinal herbs that he put in just now had clearly merged perfectly. Moreover, if he guessed correctly, the grade of this origin-enhancing pill was, bang! Tang Rui's pill was finally refined. He leaped up and grabbed the medicinal pill back. Put it into the jade box. Almost at the same time, Chu Luiyue also slammed her hand on the cauldron. A pill flew out. She waved her hand, and a red force flew out. In the blink of an eye, it transformed into a giant net, blocking the medicinal pill. Her feet moved slightly, and she also quickly kept the pill. The two of them, one in front and one behind, finished refining the pill. Tang Rui frowned slightly. Although he had successfully refined a 9th-grade pill, he didn't know why, but when he saw the calm expression of the young man opposite him, he faintly felt a trace of uneasiness in his heart. Even if he hadn't seen Chu Yu's pill with his own eyes, he knew that it was definitely not simple. To be able to successfully refine the pill after changing the prescription, it was already enough to explain too many problems. He hesitated for a moment, but still took the lead and handed over his pill. Elder Wanjing, please take a look. Elder Wanjing took his pill, and then looked at Chu Luiyue with a trace of excitement in his eyes. Chu Yu, yours. Chu Luiyue's fingers moved slightly, and she still handed over the item. Elder Wanzhang's hands each had a jade box. He held his breath and opened Tang Rui's first. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1230. A reddish-brown pill lay quietly in it. 9 lines, bright and dazzling, were coiled on it. Only the last line was slightly dimmer. It was indeed a 9th-grade pill. Elder Wanjing nodded and smiled. Tang Rui, you should have broken through for a while, right? You hit it well. Looking at the quality of this pill, it was definitely not something that could be refined for the first time. Tang Rui smiled a little embarrassedly. His white doe-like face seemed even rounder. Elder Wanzhang has good eyesight. I can't hide anything from you. Elder Wanjing nodded, suppressed the excitement in his heart, and opened Chu Luiyue's jade box. On the bright red pill, 9 lines could be seen clearly. Elder Wanzheng looked at the 9th line, and his breathing stagnated. This was also a 9th grade pill. Although he had expected this result, Elder Wanzheng was still extremely shocked when he saw it for himself. Not long ago, Chuyu had refined his first grade 9 medicinal pill under his watch. And now, this kid could actually successfully refine a 9th grade pill. There seemed to be a river rushing in his chest, as if it would rush out in the next moment. Even if he was used to all kinds of big scenes, he still couldn't control his excitement at this time. Tang Rui also saw the pill in the jade box. He couldn't help but be stunned, and then smiled bitterly. Junior brother Chuyu's talent is really amazing, and his strength is superb. I heard that when you first came to the academy, you were only an 8th grade celestial physician. It's only been 2 months, and you can already refine a 9th grade pill. He sighed and cupped his hands at Chu Luiyue. I am ashamed of my inferiority. Tang Rui's words spread in the square. Some of the noise disappeared in an instant. Almost everyone was stunned on the spot, and couldn't react for a while. What did Tang Rui say? Chuyu also refined a 9th grade pill. How was this possible? Chuyu even changed the prescription. How could he successfully refine the energy cultivation pill, and raise it by a grade? Chu Luiyue smiled. Senior brother Tang Rui, you flatter me. I was just a little bit lucky. Tang Rui shook his head and smiled helplessly. Luck? Luck was the last thing a celestial physician needed when concocting pills. He had never heard of anyone who relied on luck to successfully refine a 9th grade medicinal pill. To be able to do this, it proved that Chuyu had real talent and strength. Junior brother, you're too modest. Tang Rui sighed. Previously, he had also heard many rumors about Chuyu, and like many others, he even felt that Chuyu did not have any strength at all, and it was only by chance that he had so many fortuitous encounters. But after today's match, he finally understood that those rumors were true. Thinking about it, what kind of people were Elder Wanzheng and Rongxiu? Those who could catch their eyes were naturally not mediocre people. Elder Wanzheng took a deep breath and looked at Chu Luiyue. His eyes were filled with admiration and surprise. Middle 9th grade. He reached out and patted Chu Luiyue on the shoulder. Chu you, very good. Originally, he only wanted to let those people see how outstanding his disciple was. But he did not expect that Chu Yu's performance was actually so outstanding. It was many times better than what he had expected. He carefully looked at the 2 medicinal pills again, and then frowned slightly. His expression seemed to be somewhat conflicted. The 2 of you have refined pills of the same grade, and the quality is equally matched. This match is considered a draw. Everyone was in an uproar. A draw. Didn't that prove that Chuyu did indeed have the strength to ascend the Azure Sky rankings? But Tang Rui was ranked 100. Between the 2 of them, only one could ascend. Of course, according to the strength that they had displayed, they should be able to be ranked at the front. But then, they would have to continue to challenge higher ranks. Tang Rui suddenly cupped his hands towards Chu Luiyue and chuckled. This Azure Sky ranking should have been ascended by junior brother Chuyu. Although I refined pills of the same grade as junior brother Chuyu is only 16 years old. Just this point alone has already surpassed me by too much. Everyone had different expressions, but no one refuted. Because this was one of the rules of the Ascension rankings. If the 2 of them were of equal strength, then the younger one would be ranked at the front. Chuyu had sufficient confidence to ascend the Azure Sky rankings. Elder Wanzheng actually didn't care much about whether Chu Luiyue could ascend the Azure Sky rankings or not. In any case, everything that he had displayed was enough to prove his excellence. This was already enough. He thought in his heart. Actually, from the beginning, he shouldn't have treated ascending the Azure Sky rankings as the goal of testing Chu Yu. With this child's natural talent, he should strive for a better ranking. Elder Wanjing glanced at Tang Rui with admiration in his eyes. Tang Rui, although you will fall out of the Azure Sky rankings after this match. But with your current strength, you can definitely continue to challenge those on it. Tang Rui nodded respectfully. This student understands. Elder Wanjing looked at Chu Luyue and raised his chin with a smile. Kid, go. Place your hand on the Azure Sky rankings and inject a strand of origin power. Your name will appear. Chu Luyue's fingers curled. The Azure Sky rankings, what's wrong? Seeing that Chu Luyue didn't move for a long time, Elder Wanjing couldn't help but ask. Chu Luyue shook his head and finally walked toward the Celestial Physician rankings. Countless gazes fell on her. Envy, jealousy, admiration, surprise. Chu Luyue ignored them all. She stood still one step away from the Celestial Physician rankings. As long as she stretched out her hand and let her name appear, she would ascend the Azure Sky rankings. But, would her name really appear? Chu Luyue held his breath and finally raised his hand. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1231. Her white palm slowly approached, and finally touched the black wall. Black and white, the two extreme colors contrasted against each other, and the names on the wall sparkled with light, almost forming a painting. Quiet and brilliant. Solemn and majestic. A cold touch came from her palm. Chu Luyue's blood seemed to be boiling, flowing quickly in her limbs and bones. Her heart seemed to be tightly gripped by something. Everyone felt that she should be proud, joyful, and full of glory at this moment. But in reality, she was so nervous that she couldn't even hear the sounds around her. All she saw and heard was the honor roll of green clouds in front of her. Yesterday, she also stood here. That familiar fluctuation seemed to still be surging in her heart. She carefully moved a strand of force, and injected it into the honor roll of green clouds. Buzz! A faint buzzing sound suddenly entered her ears. Chu Luyue's heart jumped. She almost wanted to withdraw her hand. But in the next moment, that sound quickly disappeared, as if it had never appeared. Chu Luyue was stunned. She quietly waited for a while, and that sound indeed didn't sound again, and even the fluctuation that should have appeared didn't appear. Then, a ray of light appeared in her palm, and rushed upwards. She immediately looked up. That ray of light stopped at the last name on the honor roll of green clouds. Then, the name Tang Rui quietly disappeared. Her name replaced it. When she saw the words clearly, her hanging heart finally settled down. Because that name was Chu Yu. The thing she was most worried about didn't happen, and this made Chu Luyue's heart calm down. She slightly raised her head, and looked at the highest point. There, it was still dark. That hidden name didn't appear. Everything looked normal. She lightly exhaled. The surrounding crowd was silent. No matter how much criticism and suspicion they had before, it all disappeared at this moment. There was nothing better to prove a person's strength than winning a competition like this, and officially entering the honor roll of green clouds. Although this matter seemed so unbelievable, but it still happened. On the Dongwang Clock Tower, Elder Bo Yen stroked his beard and nodded in satisfaction. This Chu Yu is indeed a promising talent. Vaguely, she had some of the vigor of that girl back then. Both of them were equally good at causing trouble, and both of them were full of spirit energy. She also had astonishing talent as a mystic cultivator and martial artist. Seems like Bo Yen, you have high hopes for this Chu Yu. A voice came from behind Elder Bo Yen. Elder Bo Yen turned around and smiled. That's right. You just came back, so you don't know much about him. This kid is very powerful. For Rong Xiao to think so highly of him, he must be quite talented. A middle-aged man walked over, looked down, and nodded. It does look good. However, Elder Meng is quite critical of him. Have you been to Pengmin Mountain? Elder Bo Yen asked in shock. Shang Yusin grinned. Do you even need to ask? If Elder Meng finds out that I'm back and didn't go over immediately, I'll be in big trouble. Elder Bo Yen nodded in agreement. That's true. However, you said that Elder Meng is dissatisfied with Chu Yu. Could it be that this kid did something out of line when he was locked up in Pengmin Mountain? Shang Yusin stretched out a finger and shook it as a meaningful smile appeared on his face. No. I just haven't seen anyone who can so easily arouse Elder Meng's emotions, and he can't forget it. That's why I'm curious. To be honest, Elder Meng isn't dissatisfied with Chu Yu, but more like, curious. Shang Yusin recalled what Elder Meng said before and touched his chin. Even I want to meet this Chu Yu personally. He glanced at Elder Bo Yen. He has only been in school for 2 months, and most of the time, he was locked up in Pengmin Mountain. Such a person hasn't appeared for several years, right? He's quite capable. Elder Bo Yen smiled. He's Wan Zheng's precious disciple now, and Wan Zheng loves him very much. Don't mess around. How can that be considered messing around? Many students want to get my guidance but don't have this chance. Shang Yusin didn't care. If he's outstanding enough, it won't be a problem to deal with me. Elder Bo Yen laughed out loud. Shang Yusin suddenly thought of something and asked, oh right, the divine weapon from Grey Feather's abyss has been brought back, right? Elder Bo Yan's expression became a little strange. Yes. Shang Yusin's eyes lit up. Where did you put it? I've been thinking about it for a long time, and now that I've brought it back, you have to let me study it properly. Elder Bo Yen raised his eyebrows. It's no use begging me for this. It's not with me. If it's not with you, then where is it? Shang Yusin was stunned. Such an item, logically speaking, should belong to the dean after it was brought back. But now that the dean wasn't around, Bo Yen was naturally in charge. Elder Bo Yen raised his chin at the youth below. Yes, it's with him. Shang Yusin couldn't help but laugh. Huh? What kind of joke is this? That kid, that thing recognized him as its master. Elder Bo Yen explained leisurely, and was satisfied to see the man's expression change quickly and brilliantly. Shang Yusin closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Good kid. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from LoveNet. Chapter 1232. Elder Bo Yen snickered in his heart. Shang Yusin had been thinking about the divine weapon in Grey Feather's abyss for many years. He had always wanted to bring it back to the academy so that he could study it properly. However, he did not expect that the divine weapon had already recognized him as its master when he came out of seclusion for just a few months. It was not easy to get close to a divine weapon that had recognized its master. Shang Yusin's previous plan was completely ruined. How could he not be angry? However, you don't have to make things difficult for Chu Yu because of this. In fact, this was just a coincidence. After that, Elder Bo Yen told Shang Yusin everything that had happened from start to finish. During this time, Shang Yusin's expression kept changing. He wanted to interrupt Elder Bo Yen a few times, but he held himself back in the end. However, it was obvious that this explanation could not make him feel better. After all, he had been thinking about that divine weapon for many years. The moment it appeared, it was taken by a brat in the blink of an eye. It would be strange if he could remain calm. Actually, as a weapon refiner, you should know that this kind of thing depends on one's ability, but it also depends on one's luck. Elder Bo Yen sighed. That divine tool didn't have an artifact soul, and Chuyu just happened to throw out one of his high-grade divine tools. The sword soul forcefully barged in and turned that thing into hers. The most important thing was that the sword soul shouldn't have been able to suppress the divine tool, but it still succeeded in the end. This can only mean that the divine weapon chose him. This kind of thing was really something that others could not be envious of. Shang Yusin snorted coldly. Sooner or later, I will go and see what that brat is capable of. At this moment, Chu Luiyue still did not know that someone was thinking about her. Seeing that the name that appeared on the celestial physician list was Chu Yu, her mood instantly lightened up. She stared at the name for a moment before she turned around and walked back to Elder Wanjing. Master, what you said before still counts, right? Elder Wanjing could not help but laugh. I knew that you would be thinking about this. Don't worry. Since I have said it, I will not go back on my words. I will definitely do what I promised you. Isn't it just some points and herbs? To be able to cultivate such an outstanding disciple, he couldn't be happier. How could he have the heart to feel distressed? Here. With that, Elder Wanjing waved his hand. A dazzling stream of light flashed. Chu Luiyue caught it. Taking a closer look, her heart skipped a beat. This was Elder Wanjing's green jade token. Did he just throw this thing to me? Just as this thought flashed through Chu Luiyue's mind, he heard Elder Wanjing's heroic shout. As a reward, I'll give you 200,000 points this time. In addition, for the next 3 months, all the medicinal herbs that you take from the Medicine Wind Valley will be charged to your master's account. Chu Luiyue wasn't the only one who was shocked. Even the onlookers were stunned. 200,000 points. Some of them might not even be able to save up that much even if they spend a few years in the academy. Chu Yu actually had it all of a sudden. For the many celestial physician students present, this was not what they envied the most. What they envied the most was actually the 3 months of free use of medicinal herbs from the Medicine Wind Valley. As a celestial physician, medicinal herbs were essential. And as the level increased, the medicinal herbs needed to refine pills would also become more precious. This also caused the cost of their cultivation to increase continuously. Some of them couldn't even afford it. Although they could also earn points by selling pills and so on, it was important to know that not every pill refinement would succeed. Sometimes, it was common to fail dozens or even hundreds of times. And this process would consume a lot of resources. Sometimes, even if they lived frugally, they would still find it hard to make ends meet. And now, Elder Wanjing gave them 3 months of free use of medicinal herbs. How could they not be envious? Thank you, Master. Chu Luiyue smiled happily, her eyebrows curved. She was really happy. Originally, she thought that 1 month was the limit. Who knew that Elder Wanjing would be so awesome and give her 3 months? With these 3 months, it would definitely not be a problem for her to break through to the peak of the 9th grade. Elder Wanjing laughed out loud. Today's competition allowed him to see the huge hidden potential in Chu Luiyue. Under such circumstances, the only thing that a master could do was to guide her patiently and correctly, and try his best to solve all the worries. He couldn't wait to see Chu Yu in 3 months' time. Chu Luiyue put the 2 jade tokens together, and a stream of light flashed quickly. Instantly, a string of zeros appeared on her black jade token. She raised her eyebrows slightly, and a smile appeared on her lips. Fortunately, she didn't reject Tang Rui's request to compete. Otherwise, she would have missed out on too many things. She put away her command medallion and respectfully returned the green jade command medallion. Tang Rui cupped his hands at her. Junior brother Chu Yu, if there's a chance in the future, let's have a good spar. Chu Luiyue also smiled back. Okay. Chu Yu will be waiting for senior brother Tang Rui. Only then did Tang Rui turn and leave. He didn't find anyone else to challenge. Instead, he left directly. It seemed that he was planning to compete again next month. Chu Liyue thought for a while, and then looked at Elder Wanzheng. Master, since the competition here is over, I'd like to go back and continue to cultivate. Elder Wanzheng rubbed his chin. He wanted to ask about the prescription in detail, but seeing that Chu Liyue didn't seem to want to continue staying here, he swallowed his words. Okay. You've worked hard today. Go back and have a good rest. Elder Wanzheng patted her shoulder. It didn't seem appropriate to ask about the prescription in front of so many people. He would ask about it in detail another day when he had time. With Elder Wanzheng's permission, Chu Liyue bowed and quickly left. Unlike when she came, her steps were lighter now. Everyone thought that it was because she won the competition, so they didn't think too much about it. Now, they only envied Chu Yu for having such a generous elder as her master. Of course, they also knew that Elder Wanzheng did this because Chu Yu was worth it. Who wouldn't want such a talented disciple? All they could do was watch and feel envious. After Chu Liyue walked down the arena, Luo Shishir and the others quickly went up to congratulate her. Naturally, there were all kinds of praise and exclamations. Chu Liyue knew that the few of them had performed well. Especially Luo Shishir. It wouldn't be long before she could successfully enter the warrior ranking. After they finished congratulating each other, Shuxing chuckled and asked, Chu Yu is the first one among us to enter the master ranking. We must celebrate. How about we gather at Wine Mountain tonight? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1233. Chu Liyue's heart skipped a beat. That's right, at the beginning of the month, 1000 Wine Mountain must be very lively again. Let's not go. Luo Shishir frowned and looked at Chu Liyue tentatively. Chu Yu seemed to be at odds with 1000 Wine Mountain. Every time he went, he would cause a lot of trouble. What if he got into trouble again? Chu Liyue thought for a moment and said, it's okay to go. After all, there shouldn't be anyone who would deliberately pick on me like the first time. After all, she still had Rongxiu behind her. Chu Yu, do you really want to go? Luo Shishir was still a little worried. Chu Liyue nodded and smiled. Everyone can go, why can't I? Don't worry, I'll be careful. I don't want to be locked up in Pengmin Mountain again. Of course, she was talking about the recent times. After all, she had been warned when she came out a few days ago. It would be inappropriate for her to turn around and go back. It was better to wait for a while. Hearing her say this, Luo Shishir and the others were relieved. By the way, Chu Yu, you're staying with senior brother Rongxiu now, so we can't enter Jiuheng Mountain. We'll wait for you outside the mountain tonight, okay? Chu Liyue nodded. Okay. Chu Liyue returned to Jiuheng Mountain and saw Rongxiu standing with his hands behind his back from afar. She quickly flew over and stood in front of Rongxiu. Rongxiu's thin lips curled up slightly. Congratulations. Chu Liyue raised her eyebrows. Did you do something to the Qingyun leaderboard? You can't say that. Rongxiu smiled. Although that is also your name, the power in your body now is different from back then. I just suppressed the call of that power to you. Of course, when you break through to your previous realm, the seal will naturally be lifted. Chu Liyue blinked. My previous realm. In his impression, she had always been a rank 9 warrior and did not continue to break through. However, since he was able to get first place on both rankings, then he should be a god-level expert. However, she still didn't know what level he was at. Rongxiu raised his eyebrows slightly. You will know when the time comes. At this moment, a cold and childish voice came from inside the house. "Come in and cultivate." Chu Luiyue rubbed his temples. Ever since she started living at Rongxiu's place, no one came to disturb her. Her cultivation in all aspects had become much bolder and more convenient. Dugu Mabao was even more so. Whenever he had time, he would get her to practice. "He's here." Chu Luiyue responded, took a deep breath, and walked in. After this period of training, Chu Luiyue's strength had actually increased a lot. At the very least, she would no longer be defeated by Dugu Mabao after taking a few steps like before. However, this bit of strength was still far from enough in Dugu Mabao's eyes. Therefore, almost every time he trained, he would display stronger strength than before. And Chu Luiyue was always suppressed. The only good thing was that under this extremely abnormal training, Chu Luiyue could clearly feel that her strength as a mystic master had improved by leaps and bounds. She was only one step away from becoming a level 9 mystic master. In the evening, the sparring finally ended. Looking at the chessboard that disappeared with a bang, Chu Luiyue let out a long breath. She looked outside at the sky and stood up. "Big baby, I agreed to go to Thousand Wine Mountain with them previously. I'll be leaving first." Unexpectedly, Dugu Mabao did not object. He looked up at her and said, "It's good to go." Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1234. The sun was setting. Chu Luiyue came out of Mount Jiuheng and saw Luo Shishir and the others from afar. She quickly went forward and met up with them. Shuixing looked behind her curiously and smacked his lips. "Chu Yu, you're on the Azure Cloud roll today. Doesn't senior brother Rongxiu plan to celebrate with you?" Chu Luiyue raised her eyebrows. "You want me to invite him to Thousand Wine Mountain?" Shuixing's thoughts were seen through, but he didn't hide it and chuckled. "It's just that I respect senior brother Rongxiu and want to see more of him. But I think he won't be very interested in this kind of thing." He was just saying that. He didn't really want Chu Luiyue to spend so much effort to invite Rongxiu. Chu Luiyue remembered that a certain someone had told her not to play outside for too long before she left. She couldn't help but smile. Rongxiu wasn't just not interested in Thousand Wine Mountain. He also had some opinions about her going to Thousand Wine Mountain. However, he saw that she really wanted to go, so he didn't stop her and let her do as she pleased. "If senior brother Rongxiu goes, I'm afraid everyone won't be able to have a good time," Chu Luiyue said. Many elders in the academy were much more polite when they saw Rongxiu, let alone these students. If he were to go, he was afraid that everyone present would be extremely restrained. What else was there to say? Luo Shishir couldn't help but laugh. "That's true. Many people in the academy admire senior brother Rongxiu very much, but I'm afraid they won't even be able to say a complete sentence in front of him." Hearing this, Zhusheng could only shrug his shoulders regretfully. "Then let's go by ourselves." When they arrived at Thousand Wine Mountain, the sky was already completely dark. Only halfway up the mountain was a sea of bright lights and a boiling cauldron of voices. It was very lively. Chu Luiyue and the others had just arrived and attracted the attention of many people. The crowd fell silent for a moment. Although Chu Luiyue had been here many times before, today was different. Only because she was ranked on the honor roll of Azure Sky. Dumpling ran out early and squatted on Chu Luiyue's shoulder. When it heard the gurgling sound of the stream, its eyes lit up and it became restless. If it weren't for the fact that there were so many people around, it would have rushed straight to the mouth of the spring. It looked up and rubbed its furry little head against Chu Luiyue's cheek. Its thoughts were clear as day. Chu Luiyue knew that it was waiting impatiently, so he lifted his foot and went up. Many people automatically retreated to the sides to make a path for her. Even though the 100th place on the celestial physician ranking wasn't considered a top-notch achievement, everyone in the academy knew that Chu Yu, who occupied this position, had only entered the academy for less than 2 months. Most importantly, he was only 16 years old. It was obvious that this kid's future was limitless. Even if he didn't consider the backing behind him, it was inevitable that people would be wary of him just by looking at his talent and temperament. When Chu Luiyue arrived at the mouth of the spring, there were already a few people standing there. There was a familiar face among them. Lu Yintong. However, before Chu Luiyue could say anything, Lu Yintong had already taken a step back and said, "Chu Yu, you're here? I've already reserved this spot for you. You can use it." Chu Luiyue was stunned for a moment, then he looked up and carefully sized up Lu Yintong. Unlike the previous few times when he had seen her, Lu Yintong's expression now carried a rare hint of nervousness. It was as if she was afraid of doing something wrong, but there was also a hint of eagerness to please him. That's strange, Chu Luiyue thought to himself. Lu Yintong's temper was irritable and she had always been competitive. Otherwise, she wouldn't have hated her when her red-tailed phoenix was defeated by Dumpling. But why did it seem like she was a different person now? Senior Sister Lu. Actually, we've already fulfilled our bet. I'll do it myself from now on, so I won't trouble you. Chu Luiyue said. The punishment had been effective, and Lu Yintong had offended many people because of it. In Chu Luiyue's opinion, this matter could be considered over. After all, her time was precious, and she didn't want to waste too much time on this kind of thing. She thought that Lu Yintong would be relieved after hearing this, but she didn't expect her face to turn pale. She couldn't help but take a step forward and ask in panic and worry, "No trouble, no trouble. I did something wrong before. As an apology and compensation, this is what I should do. Junior brother Chu Yu, please don't be polite with me. You're not still angry with me, are you?" Chu Luiyue's expression became even stranger. What's going on? Lu Yintong still wants to continue. But this matter seems to have more disadvantages than benefits for her, right? Shouldn't a normal person be happy to be able to escape from such torture? Who would be so reluctant to part with it? Chu Luiyue stared at her and realized that her expression didn't seem to be fake. She was even more surprised. She smiled. "Senior Sister Lu, why would I be angry with you? Isn't this matter in the past?" She didn't like to waste her emotions on this kind of thing. Lu Yintong looked at the young man in front of her nervously. His appearance was clean and delicate, his eyes were clear, and there was a casual and gentle smile at the corner of his mouth. He looked harmless. It seemed like he really didn't care. Lu Yintong secretly heaved a sigh of relief, but she also felt a sense of emptiness. In the short span of 2 months, their identities seemed to have completely reversed. When she first met this young man, she never thought that there would be a time when she would be submissive to him. That's good, she muttered softly, and then couldn't help but say. "Junior brother Chu Yu, I was too impulsive in the past, and that's why I did so many things that you didn't like. I hope you don't mind. I promise, I won't do that again. I only hope that junior brother Chu Yu can let bygones be bygones." For a moment, Chu Luiyue wanted to ask Lu Yintong if she was sick and had a fever. It was normal for her to want to let bygones be bygones. After all, Chu Luiyue had his own place in the academy now. Coupled with the support of a few people behind her, she had truly become a person that wasn't to be trifled with in the academy. Everyone was more or less afraid. But Lu Yintong didn't seem to need to be so eager to please him, right? This didn't seem like something she would do. "Senior Sister Lu, if you have something to say, just say it." Chu Luiyue sized her up and said. Lu Yintong instantly felt as if she had been completely seen through. At this moment, she realized that Chu Yu was more intelligent and cunning than she had imagined. She clenched her fists tightly, and her nails dug into her palms. After hesitating for a while, she said, "No, nothing. I just feel that I've gone too far in the past. So, if junior brother Chuyu needs my help in the future, just say the word." Before Chu Luiyue could reply, he suddenly heard a mocking voice from the side. Junior brother Chuyu is now protected by elder Wanzhang and senior brother Rongxiu. Why would he need your help? Aren't you thinking too highly of yourself? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1235. The crowd fell silent. Chu Luiyue turned around and saw a familiar face. It was Liang Xiaoxiao. She and Jiang Ziyuan came side by side, and the words just now came out of her mouth. If junior brother Chuyu hadn't caught senior brother Rongxiu's eye, I'm sure you'd still be thinking about how to deal with him, right? You. Lu Yintong's face turned pale. This Liang Xiaoxiao had never given her any face. They had fallen out with each other last time. Now that they saw each other again, they were naturally jealous. Do you think you can make up for what you've done just by saying a few nice words? Liang Xiaoxiao covered her mouth and smiled. Don't you think it's too late to apologize now? Do you think everyone is stupid and can't figure out your real intention? Isn't he just trying to get closer to senior brother Rongxiu through Chuyu? Liang Xiaoxiao poked Jiang Jiwan's arm. Ziyuan, you know senior Rongxiu very well. Why don't you tell him if he'll fall for it? Jiang Jiwan said lightly. He has always been cold and aloof. He won't take it to heart. Besides. She paused, glanced at Lu Yintong, and said with a hidden meaning. Besides, he hates it when others pester him. Even she, who had been infatuated with Rongxiu for a long time and was the princess that the old patriarch of the Yuntian Tower had set his eyes on, didn't dare to do anything out of line. A few years ago, she had been working hard on her cultivation and didn't even see Rongxiu's face. Last time at the Yuntian Tower, she barged in and was taught a lesson. Let alone others. Lu Yintong clenched her teeth. Don't you dare slander me. I just feel sorry for what I did to Junior Chuyu, so. Before she could finish her sentence, she heard Liang Xiaoxiao's mocking laughter. Lu Yintong, do you believe what you just said? Lu Yintong could no longer continue. Her face was burning. Chu Luiyue, who was standing at the side, blinked and then realized, so it was because of Rongxiu. Lu Yintong's change in attitude was simply too inexplicable. Sensing her gaze, Lu Yintong felt even more embarrassed. She finally turned around and left quickly. That back view, no matter how one looked at it, had the intention of fleeing. Liang Xiaoxiao crossed her arms and sneered. You really haven't given up on your evil intentions. Senior brother Rongxiu had already said it so clearly, but he still dared to have such improper thoughts. He really didn't have the slightest self-awareness. On the other hand, Jiang Jiwan didn't seem to be so agitated. Her expression was relatively calm, and she only raised her eyes to look at Chu Luiyue. After pausing for a moment, she suddenly walked towards Chu Luiyue. When they finally stood still, the distance between them was only 3 steps. She gave Chu Luiyue a generous and appropriate smile. Junior brother Chuyu, thank you for what you did before. Jiang Jiwan was born very beautiful. Her body was slender, and her facial features were exquisite. Although it was night, under the illumination of the surrounding lights, she appeared even more lovely and moving. Her smile was pure with a tinge of gentleness, causing many people around her to stare blankly at her. Unfortunately, this trick was useless against Chu Luiyue. She also smiled. Deep in her black jade-like eyes, there was a wave of calmness. Senior sister Jiang, why are you thanking me? Jiang Ji-won saw that the young man in front of her didn't seem to be moved by her goodwill, and couldn't help but feel a little dissatisfied. This Chu Yu, why does it seem like I can't see through his thoughts? However, these thoughts only flashed through her mind, and all her emotions didn't show on her face. Her smile didn't change, and she said softly, naturally, "It's to thank you for helping senior brother Rong Xiu block that blow. Although his strength is tyrannical, and generally there won't be any problems when encountering such things, but it's good to have junior brother Chu Yu's help." Her eyebrows were tinged with a bit of worry, but the smile on her lips deepened, and her beautiful eyes were full of sincerity. "I heard that this time he returned safely and wasn't seriously injured. If junior brother Chu Yu wasn't quick-witted and went through the academy's barrier in time, I'm afraid the consequences would be unimaginable." Needless to say, junior brother Chu Yu was punished to stay in Min Mountain for a month. For him, junior brother Chu Yu sacrificed a lot. Chu Liuyue's eyes moved slightly, and the corners of her mouth hooked up into a smile. Jiang Ji-won's words, on the surface, seemed to be praising her, but in fact, she was secretly mocking her for not knowing what was good for her, for violating the academy's rules and forcibly breaking through the barrier. In the eyes of most people, this was not something to be proud of after all. Unfortunately, these words didn't have any lethality to Chu Liyue, because she didn't care about the opinions and criticisms of others at all. Moreover, staying in Min Mountain was quite enjoyable. Thus, after hearing these words, Chu Liyue didn't get angry or embarrassed. Instead, she smiled even more brilliantly and pushed the boat with the current. "Senior sister Jiang, you flatter me. I only did something small that I could do. I really don't dare to claim credit. Moreover, senior brother Rong Xiu has already thanked me personally. I think senior sister Jiang doesn't need to do anything unnecessary, right?" Jiang Ji-won's face instantly lit up. Chu Liyue didn't seem to notice, and continued, "I helped senior brother Rong Xiu, not you, senior sister Jiang. I think senior martial sister Jiang should take back her words of thanks. Otherwise, it wouldn't be good to be misunderstood by others." Jiang Ji-won's heart burned with anger. Was Chu Yu slapping her face in front of everyone? She forced a smile and said, "I grew up with His Highness the Holy Sun since we were young. We have a deep friendship, so there's no need to make such a clear distinction." In order to save face, she even changed the way she addressed Rong Xiu. "Oh." Chu Liyue interrupted her and said with a smile that was not a smile, "When senior sister Jiang said that, I almost thought that senior brother Rong Xiu's princess consort was senior sister Jiang." The smile on Jiang Ji-won's face finally couldn't be maintained. She could tell that this Chu Yu didn't plan to speak to her peacefully. He was young, but he had a sharp tongue. The atmosphere was awkward and cold. Everyone could hear the sarcasm in Chu Liyue's words just now. That's right. At the end of the day, Jiang Ji-won didn't have any special relationship with Rong Xiu. What right did she have to say, "Thank you" for him? Speaking of which, in the entire academy, wasn't Chu Yu the closest person to Rong Xiu? What she said just now was really laughable. Jiang Ji-won took a deep breath. In fact, from the first time she saw this Chu Yu, she didn't like him very much. She didn't know where this feeling came from, but it lingered. Seeing the dumpling squatting on Chu Liyue's shoulder, she narrowed her eyes and suddenly said, "Junior brother Chu Yu, this contracted divine beast of yours looks rather familiar." She remembered clearly that Chu Liyue also had an identical red-tailed phoenix. She suddenly thought of something and turned her gaze to Chu Liyue. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1236. Red-tailed Red Phoenix. Chu Liyue calmly turned his head to look at Dumpling and smiled calmly. It's not strange that senior sister Jiang looks familiar. After all, senior sister Lu has one, right? Jiang Ji-won was stunned and immediately frowned. "No, that's not right. She felt that this red-tailed red phoenix looked familiar, and it was definitely not just because it was a red-tailed red phoenix. She had also seen Lu Yintong's red-tailed red phoenix before. Although they were of the same race, in reality, due to the difference in bloodline power and other reasons, it looked different from the one in front of her. She could clearly tell the difference between these two divine beasts. In comparison, the one in front of her was more like the one she had fought before. At first, she didn't feel it, but now that she was standing close and looking at it carefully, the more she looked, the more she felt that it was similar. Once this thought was born, it seemed to have taken root in her mind, and she couldn't get rid of it. "No, your red-tailed red phoenix is different," she said, looking at Chu Luyue with eyes full of scrutiny. Something was indeed wrong. According to Rong Xiu's personality, it was impossible for him to value someone so much for no reason, and it was even more impossible for him to let her live with him. Unless he had known this person for a long time. Moreover, their relationship was definitely not shallow. Jiang Jiwan looked at the youth in front of her carefully, trying to find even the slightest bit of hesitation and guilt on his face. However, there was none. From head to toe, the youth's expression was as usual. In the face of her interrogation, he actually laughed, with a hint of the mischievous and undisciplined aura of a youth. "My contracted divine beast naturally can't be compared to those." There was a hint of pride in his laughter, full of confidence, and natural ease in his voice. It was really hard for people to doubt him when he looked like this. "Senior Sister Jiang, if you like it, you can take a look more. This color is very beautiful, and it's rare to see it elsewhere." Jiang Jiwan didn't believe it and stared at the red-tailed red phoenix for a while. It squatted on the young man's shoulder. It was a furry little ball, and its whole body was red. From afar, it looked like a ball of fire. It seemed to have sensed Jiang Jiwan's gaze. It turned its head to look at her, then lazily buried its head in its wings. Only then did Jiang Jiwan discover that this red-tailed red phoenix seemed to be a little different from the one in her impression. The color of its feathers and eyes seemed to be denser than that one. Could it be that I was wrong? Chu Luyue patted Dumpling gently. "Go." Dumpling raised her head, her eyes sparkling. She rubbed her head against Chu Luyue's face in a fawning manner, then quickly flew towards the spring. Because there were many people around, Dumpling restrained herself and only landed on a rock beside the spring. The spring water gurgled out, and her little head was almost buried in it. During this period of time, Chu Luyue would bring Dumpling over whenever she had time. Therefore, this wasn't the first time many people had seen such a scene, so it didn't attract much attention. Chu Luyue looked at Jiang Jiwan, who was deep in thought. "Senior Jiang, is there anything else? If not, my friends and I will be going over there." Jiang Jiwan wanted to say something but stopped. She wanted to ask her in detail, but in the end, she swallowed those words back. "Xiao Xiao, let's go." With that, she turned around to leave. Liang Xiao Xiao looked surprised and hurriedly pulled her. "Hey, why are you suddenly leaving? We just arrived." Jiang Jiwan frowned. "I suddenly feel a little uncomfortable and want to go back and rest." Liang Xiao Xiao was even more puzzled. Uncomfortable? Wasn't she fine just now? Why did she suddenly become like this? Or was it because of what Chiyu said just now that made her unhappy? After thinking about it, Liang Xiao Xiao felt that it was because of this. "All right then, I'll go back with you." Jiang Jiwan shook her head. "No need. You stay here, that's it. Don't ruin the mood because of me." Liang Xiao Xiao didn't really want to leave. After all, this was the day they could relax the most every month. If she left like this, it would be boring to go back. "Then you'll be fine, right?" Jiang Jiwan forced a smile. "Don't worry. I can still do such a small thing." Then, she declined the request of a few young men to send her back and left alone. Liang Xiaoxiao looked at her back view and shrugged. Although she and Jiang Jiwon were best friends and had a good relationship, Jiang Jiwon still had reservations about her many times. She wasn't stupid, so how could she not see any clues? But there was no need to pursue this matter so much. People from aristocratic families like them knew what to say and what not to say. Although her talent wasn't top-notch, she still had a discerning eye. Liang Xiaoxiao quickly retracted her gaze and went to play with the others. Chu Luiyue looked at Dumpling, who wanted nothing more than to dive into the spring, and thought about staying in Thousand Wine Mountain. Dumpling only came here once every night, and after a period of time, there were obvious changes. If she could stay here for a month and completely awaken the power of her bloodline, what would it be like? After Jiang Jiwon left Thousand Wine Mountain, she quickly returned to her residence. After entering the room, she carefully closed the door and sat down at the desk. After thinking for a moment, she spread out a piece of paper and began to write a letter. After a while, a letter was written. She carefully folded the letter and stuffed it into the body of a prepared bronze bird. After injecting a stream of force, the bronze bird flapped its wings and flew outside. Under the thick night sky, the bronze bird's figure quickly disappeared. Jiang Jiwon clasped her hands in front of her and frowned. She was very suspicious of Chu Yu's identity. Also, Rong Xiu's attitude towards him was very suspicious. After thinking about it, she decided to write a letter back to the Immortal Water Mausoleum and ask her father for help to investigate. If she found anything wrong with Chu Yu, she would expose it immediately. 9 Eternal Mountain. In the silence, the void vibrated. Then, a figure appeared in front of the house. Dressed in black, he was tall and straight. It was Rong Xiu. From the looks of it, he had just returned from somewhere. He was about to walk forward when he suddenly paused and looked back. Under the dark sky, he could only see the undulating mountain range. Suddenly, a murderous intent flashed past his deep phoenix eyes. Swish! He waved his sleeve and a stream of black force flew out. Very soon, the origin power returned with a bronze bird in tow. Rong Xiu looked at the bronze bird and narrowed his eyes dangerously. Bang! There was a slight explosion. The bronze bird instantly shattered. A letter fell from it. Rong Xiu raised his hand and the letter fell into his hand. He opened it and glanced at it. With a slight movement of his fingers, the letter silently turned into powder. Then, he took out a snow-white handkerchief and wiped his hands. A cluster of golden flames burned, and the handkerchief was quickly burned to ashes. He turned around and entered the house. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1237. 10,000 Wine Mountain. Time slowly passed, and gradually, people began to leave. Luo Yanming looked at the sky and said, I have to go first too. Master just gave me a few Xian formations today and said that there will be an assessment in a few days. I have to hurry. Luo Shishir and the others expressed their understanding. Although Elder Huafeng was amiable, he was actually very strict in this aspect. In addition, there was Luo Yanlin, who had always been outstanding, so as his younger brother, Luo Yanming naturally felt even more pressure. By the way, Chu Yu, when you have time later, I want to spar with you. Luo Yanming looked at Chu Luiyue and said sincerely. Chu Luiyue raised his eyebrows in surprise. Then, he thought that Elder Huafeng must have said something to make Luo Yanming have such an idea. She smiled and nodded slightly. Okay. Actually, during this period of time, there had been all kinds of rumors about how Chu Yu passed through the Academy's barrier. But no matter which one it was basically confirmed that Chu Yu was also a Xian master. Luo Yanming had been by Elder Huafeng's side for the past few days and had indeed heard him mention this matter a lot. Although Elder Huafeng didn't elaborate, it wasn't difficult to guess that Chuyu was extremely talented as a Xian master. This made Luo Yanming a little curious, which was why she made this invitation. Luo Yanming smiled when he saw her agree. Then it's a deal. With that, he quickly left. Shuixing couldn't help but turn around to size up Chu Luiyue and smile in surprise, to be able to make Yanming want to fight. Chu Yu, you're really amazing. Your level as a Xian master shouldn't be low, right? Chu Luiyue rubbed his chin. Not really, but thanks to my good master, it's still passable. Shuixing and Luo Shishir naturally thought that the master she was talking about was Rongxiu, so they didn't ask further. After a while, there were fewer and fewer people on the mountain. Let's go too. When Luo Shishir said this, she deliberately stared at Chu Luiyue. She didn't want what happened last time to repeat itself. There can be 1 and 2, but not 3. No one knew what kind of punishment they would receive if they did it again. Especially the one in front of him. Chu Luiyue smiled helplessly. He knew what she was worried about, so he could only raise his hands. All right. Let's leave now. Luo Shishir couldn't help but laugh. When she saw the young man's dark eyes, her heart couldn't help but tremble slightly, as if she had been hit by something. Her face heated up slightly, and she lowered her head. Chu Luiyue didn't notice her expression. He turned around and called out to a certain little thing that was already drunk and didn't know where to go. Dumpling, let's go. Dumpling shakily raised her head from the spring. Despite her reluctance, Dumpling forced herself to fly back. I wonder when I'll be able to relive those happy days again. It smacked its lips, closed its eyes, and began to digest the power it had devoured today. Just as they were about to leave, Chu Luiyue suddenly felt a strange fluctuation coming from his body. She was stunned. Because this fluctuation was very unfamiliar. She stopped in her tracks and carefully sensed it. Sure enough, another fluctuation came over. Girl, the sword soul of the Long Yuan sword has almost completely fused with this sword. There's only one step left before it can be awakened. Taizu's voice suddenly sounded in her ears. Chu Luiyue was stunned. Taizu. What do you mean by that? Taizu explained, this sword soul is very powerful. This divine artifact's grade is extremely high. Although it has already recognized you as its master, it is still not completely yours. Only after it has been tempered by Tianlei can it achieve sword soul fusion and forge the sword soul of the Long Yuan sword into a weapon soul. Only then can it be truly controlled by you. Chu Luiyue was stunned for a moment. So, you're saying that if I want to use this sword, I still have to trigger Tianlei and temper it. But with her current strength, it was impossible for her to do that. As if guessing her thoughts, Taizu said, don't worry. Just like last time, I'll help you lure Tianlei over. At that time, you just have to control that sword and help it forge a weapon soul. Because you're the owner of the Long Yuan sword, the sword soul will only listen to you, so, only you can do this. But, Chu Luiyue was a little hesitant. Triggering Tianlei in the academy would definitely attract the attention of many elders. Moreover, this sword of hers was originally an item of the academy's ancestors. When the sword soul becomes a weapon soul, I can also escape from here. Taizu suddenly sighed. Chu Luiyue was shocked. What? Taizu, you mean, you can come out of here? This was just a remnant of Taizu's consciousness. Logically speaking, when the Long Yuan sword recognized her as its master, it should have dissipated. But it didn't. And since then, Taizu had been residing in the Long Yuan sword, almost fusing with it. Chu Luiyue never thought that Taizu would have a chance of successfully escaping. Taizu sighed faintly. I never thought that this day would come. But ever since the Long Yuan sword recognized you as its master, the sword's soul has become stronger day by day. Now that it has fused with that divine artifact, it's even more shocking. The moment it transforms into a weaponed soul, perhaps, will be the moment when I can escape from here. A flash of inspiration flashed through Chu Liuyue's mind. Her heart beat violently. Taizu, she spoke with difficulty. Even she felt that every word she said was absurd and unbelievable. You are still alive. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1238. Of course, this alive wasn't referring to the remnant divine consciousness, but the real Shenghuan Jing. No, if it could leave the divine artifact and survive independently, then it shouldn't be called divine consciousness. That was Taizu's real soul. Chu Liuyue's question made Taizu fall silent. After a while, the great ancestor let out a long sigh. I don't know either. His voice was much lower, as if he had aged a lot in an instant. It was mixed with the loneliness and lamentation of thousands of years, as well as a trace of confusion. This was the first time Chu Liyue heard Taizu speak to her in such a tone. He seemed to really not know. I spent thousands of years alone in the Tianling God realm. There are indeed many things that I have forgotten, including my death back then. Chu Liyue's heart skipped a beat. In the secret history of the Tianling dynasty, it had always been recorded that Taizu had tried to break through the shackles and become a god-level powerhouse, but he failed and died. After his death, the Long Yuan sword was left in the half-divine realm that he had painstakingly condensed as a supporting divine artifact. As for the great ancestor, it was only natural that he should have vanished into thin air in that failure. Chu Liyue had always believed in this matter because what she had heard and seen before was exactly the same. Although she had secretly wondered why Taizu's divine consciousness hadn't dissipated after the Long Yuan sword recognized its master. But at that time, she didn't think too much about it. Until now, Taizu could actually be independent of the divine artifact. Moreover, Taizu even said that he had forgotten his death back then. How could a top powerhouse forget what happened at the end of his life? There was probably something wrong with this. Chu Yu. Luo Shishir and Zhuxing walked for a while before realizing that Chu Liyue wasn't following them. She turned around and saw that she was standing there alone, as if in a daze. Zhuxing raised his voice again. Chu Yu. What are you thinking about? We should go. Chu Liyue finally regained his senses. He's here. As she spoke, she walked towards the two of them. What happened to you? Zhuxing looked at her strangely. Everything was fine just now. How did it become like this all of a sudden? Chu Yu, are you all right? Luo Shishir frowned worriedly. Although the expression on Chu Yu's face was still relatively calm, this kind of absent-minded appearance was extremely rare. Chu Liyue closed his eyes and suppressed the waves in his heart. Don't worry, I'm fine. It's just that I suddenly thought of something just now and was lost in it for a moment, so I didn't follow you guys. Hey, what's the matter? Why are you so concerned about it? Zhuxing's interest was immediately piqued. He grinned and asked mysteriously. Chu Liyue smiled. It's nothing important. It's not worth mentioning. This meant that he didn't want to reveal it. However, Zhuxing wasn't someone who wanted to get to the bottom of things. Seeing that Chu Liyue didn't want to say more, he didn't continue asking. It's not too late to think about it when we get back. Let's hurry up and leave. If we're late, we won't be able to bear the consequences. Luo Shishir frowned slightly, but she didn't ask any more questions. The three of them continued to walk down the mountain. This time, they left in time. When they reached the bottom of the mountain and walked out of the barrier, they vaguely heard the sound of wind and thunder coming from the top of the mountain. Chu Luiyue turned around to take a look. In fact, they couldn't see anything through the barrier. However, she seemed to be able to feel the imposing Tianlei falling down one after another. It was a pity that she couldn't stay here. She retracted her gaze, said goodbye to Luo Shishir, and left on her own. When she returned to Jiuheng Mountain, it was already late at night. However, the light in Rongxiu's room was still on. Rongxiu had just walked out of his room. "You're back." Chu Liuyue's heart warmed. She didn't know if it was because of Rongxiu's patience or something else. For a moment, she clearly felt a sweet and soft warmth surging from the bottom of her heart to her limbs and bones, enveloping her. She nodded. "You've been waiting for me." Rongxiu's lips curled into a faint smile. "Yes and no. I was looking at something quite interesting just now." Anything that caught Rongxiu's eye was definitely not an ordinary item. Chu Luiyue was a little interested. "What is it?" Rongxiu walked over and held her hand. "Come with me." His warm and broad palm instantly wrapped around her somewhat cold hand. The familiar cold fragrance filled her body, making her feel more at ease and her whole body relaxed. She obediently followed Rongxiu into the room. After entering, Rongxiu brought her to the desk. Chu Luiyue immediately saw a book on top of it. The pages of the book were yellowed, and it seemed to be quite old. "Is this the thing you're talking about?" Chu Luiyue looked at Rongxiu strangely. Rongxiu raised his chin and smiled. "Take a look first." Only then did Chu Luiyue pick up the book. However, when she held it in her hand, she was shocked to find that the book looked old and thin, but it was actually very heavy. If it wasn't for her physical strength, she might not have been able to pick it up. "What is this?" Chu Liuyue's voice came to an abrupt halt when she saw the cover. Because there was a painting on it. It was a carefully drawn picture of a sword. It was simple, grand, solemn, and dignified. The lines seemed to penetrate the back of the paper, wrapped in a great force. Just a casual glance like this almost made one unable to breathe. However, this was not the most important thing. Because the sword drawn in this picture was clearly the divine artifact that she had obtained not long ago. Digression, September Peripheral Event Winners List, 1. Star of Monthly Votes, Shueshweli, 142/2, Star of Commentary, UUUX9 Memories of Qian 2. QQ Reading Star of Recommendation Votes, Dislike, 150, Star of Commentary, Ling Bao, Yi Luoshi Down, Red Sleeves. Please join the group as soon as possible and find February to verify the peripheral events mobile users. Please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1239. This is, she looked at Rongxiu in shock. "This is the notebook left behind by that senior," said Rongxiu with a smile. "It took me a lot of effort to find it." Although these words sounded like a joke, Chu Luiyue understood that it was extremely difficult to find this book. There were tens of millions of books in the academy. It was easy to imagine how much effort it took to find this book in the vast sea of books. Moreover, the academy had spent a lot of effort to get this divine artifact back. Everything related to it must have been strictly guarded. Rongxiu could even get his hands on this. Chu Luiyue held the book. Her fingertips could still feel the rough and heavy pages of the book. Something seemed to be surging in her chest. This thing, the academy wouldn't let it out so easily, right? How did you get it? Without that divine artifact, the existence of this notebook is meaningless. In the whole world, this notebook is only a true treasure in your hands. If they didn't give it to you, it would be meaningless to leave it on the shelf. So, this thing isn't that difficult to get. Rong Xiao said it casually, but Chu Luiyuan knew that things weren't that simple. But Rong Xiao obviously didn't intend to explain in detail. Even if she continued to ask, she probably wouldn't get anything out of him. I promised you before that I would bring this thing to you. Naturally, I won't go back on my word. Rong Xiao said as he held her face and kissed her forehead. His breath was warm, as if it could make one's heart boil. Chu Luiyue looked up at him. Rong Xiao. Her red lips moved slightly. She wanted to say something, but after thinking about it, she felt that words were so weak. This man would always stand by her side and give her everything she wanted. In the whole world, there were very few people who could do this. However, he did it. And from the beginning until now, he had never flaunted how good he was. It was as if all this was natural. How rare was it to have such a husband in this world? She reached out and grabbed the front of Rong Xiao's shirt and pulled hard. Rong Xiao cooperated and bowed slightly. Chu Luiyue kissed his lips. This kiss was unbelievably soft and sweet, dazzlingly sweet. After a while, the two finally separated. Rong Xiao held her tightly in his arms and rested his chin on her shoulder. His voice was low and hoarse. Is this a reward? His voice still carried a trace of muddiness from his infatuation, and when it entered her ears, it practically instantly entered into the depths of her heart, causing her heart to tremble. No, Chu Luiyue closed his eyes. It's love. In the end, Chu Luiyue returned to his room. According to a certain someone, he wasn't sure what would happen if they stayed together under such circumstances. Therefore, Chu Luiyue went back obediently. Late at night, the surroundings were silent. Only the occasional rustling of the night wind through the forest could be heard, but it seemed even lonelier. Chu Luiyue sat cross-legged, holding the notebook in her hand. At this time, that frightening aura still didn't diminish at all. Chu Luiyue's gaze swept over it carefully. This was a sword. Some strange golden patterns were engraved on the scabbard, looking solemn and mysterious. The sword hilt was blue gold and carved into a dragon's head. Its eyes were deep, as if bottomless darkness. Just by looking at it like this, one would feel as if they were about to be swallowed by it. Further up was a round stem, smooth and clean, completely black, with a tassel hanging from the end. So this sword is also related to the dragon clan, Chu Luiyue murmured softly. If that was the case, it was no wonder that the sword's soul of the dragon abyss sword could be successfully integrated into it. Of course, there should be Taizu's help in this to succeed in the end. She moved her mind. Flowing light flashed in front of her. In the next moment, a long sword suddenly appeared in front of her. It floated quietly in mid-air, but the surrounding space seemed to be slightly distorted by this terrifying aura. This showed how strong the power contained in it was. Chu Luiyue stared at the sword in front of her. It looked exactly the same as the one drawn in the notebook. However, because that book was an item from too long ago, although it was well preserved, it was still yellowed and old. It looked as if it was covered with a layer of grayish-yellow gauze. When this sword appeared in front of her, she could clearly feel the vast aura that seemed to come from a distant time and space. Everything was so fresh. Chu Luiyue flipped open the notebook. 3 vigorous and powerful words appeared on the title page. Red Cloud Sword. Chu Luiyue carefully flipped through the entire book bit by bit. When she finished reading the last page, she closed it, finally closed her eyes, and let out a long breath. So, the owner of this sword, who was also its forger, was Elder Fan Bei. Back then, Elder Fan Bei obtained a precious sword embryo and made up his mind to forge a peerless sword. In order to forge this sword, he went to the Dark Feathers Abyss and spent a full 3 months there, guiding Tianlei to temper it every day before finally forging it. Unfortunately, these 3 months had exhausted all his strength and blood essence. The moment Red Cloud Sword appeared, he was already a lamp that had run out of oil. In the end, he knew that he did not have much time left, so he simply took the blood from his heart and poured it on Red Cloud's sword. With his own life as a guide, he made it reborn and crossed the threshold of a venerable artifact. In the end, the sword was forged and he died. And this Red Cloud sword, before it could be born, fell in the Dark Feather's abyss together with it. For thousands of years, this sword was buried deep and never saw the light of day again. Until recently, when the Dark Feather's abyss was in chaos, the Lingxiao College elders realized that Red Cloud's sword was about to be born. In fact, many people knew that there was a divine artifact buried in the Dark Feather's abyss. Otherwise, the Golden Wings sect and many other sects would not have sent so many people to fight for it. It was rumored that it was an Emperor divine artifact. But in fact, it was a real venerable artifact. Fortunately, this thing was snatched back by the Lingxiao College in the end, and not many people knew the true level of this divine artifact. Otherwise, it would have become a big trouble. This book was written by Elder Fan Bei when he was forging the Scarlet Heaven sword in the past. It recorded every step of forging Red Cloud sword, and also some of Elder Fan Bei's experience. However, because Elder Fan Bei died when this sword was just forged, he did not leave behind the incantation to use it. Thus, Chu Luiyue could only research it herself from the previous records. However, this level of divine artifact was extremely intelligent. As long as she could completely master it, this would not be a problem. Chu Luiyue put away the book and looked up at Red Cloud's sword in front of her. She took a deep breath and held the sword hilt. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1240. Then, she pulled with all her might. The Scarlet Heaven sword did not move at all. Chu Luiyue was stunned and took a closer look. This sword. It's not rusty, why can't I pull it out? She gritted her teeth, increased her strength, and tried again. The Scarlet Heaven sword still did not react. The sword seemed to be firmly embedded in the scabbard. No matter how Chu Luiyue tried, she could not pull it out. After failing several times, Taizu's voice sounded faintly. Girl, don't waste your energy. If you don't refine this sword, you won't be able to use it. Chu Luiyue suddenly came back to her senses. What? Doesn't that mean that as long as I don't refine it, I won't be able to use this sword? Taizu pondered for a moment and said seriously, That seems to be the case. Oh right, I forgot to tell you, because the Long Yuan sword's soul has been transferred to this sword, so... From now on, the Long Yuan sword is useless. Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat, and she immediately summoned the Long Yuan sword. The black arrow was cold and heavy in her hand. She poured her force into it, but the Long Yuan sword did not have any reaction. The pressure of a venerable artifact is heavy, and it can easily crush the Long Yuan sword. If I wasn't here, the Long Yuan sword would have been destroyed the moment the sword's soul was transferred. Taizu sighed. How can a venerable artifact be so easy to control? Chu Luiyue, so, what was her situation now? The Long Yuan sword could not be used, and the Scarlet Heaven sword could not even be pulled out. She rubbed the space between her eyebrows with a headache. If that was the case, didn't that mean that she only had one path left? Girl, actually, this is nothing. Anyway, with me here, I can help you trigger Tianlei, and you can also complete the tempering. Isn't this quite simple? Chu Luiyue, Taizu seemed to think too highly of her. But at this point, it seemed that there was no other way to solve the problem other than this. She thought for a moment. Then Taizu, please lend me a hand. Chu Luiyue walked out of the room and came to the top of the mountain. To trigger Tianlei, this place was naturally the most suitable. The only concern was that if the commotion was too big, it would attract the attention of many people's attention. But now, she could not care less. Besides, there's a barrier that Rongxiu set up outside Jiuheng Mountain, so it should be able to hide it. Chu Luiyue found a relatively flat spot on the mountain peak, took out the star stone, and placed Qi Xiao's sword on it. A translucent figure flew out. It was the great ancestor. Chu Luiyue glanced at Taizu's eyes. Great ancestor, why do I feel that your body seems to have become much more solid than before? In the past, the great ancestor's phantom was filled with an illusory aura, but now, there was a huge change. Liu Yue's S of God, yes, I feel the same way. The longer he stayed with Chu Luiyue, the stronger his aura became. When they first met, he was almost in a state where he could disappear at any time. But now, he was getting stronger. He didn't know what was going on either. However, ever since the sword's soul of the Dragon Abyss sword entered the Scarlet Heaven sword, he realized that he no longer needed to rely on it and could live freely. Chu Luiyue was more and more certain of her previous guess. This should be a part of Taizu's soul. It was just that 1,000 years had reduced his strength and destroyed his memories. That was why even he thought that he was just a remnant of his divine consciousness. Chu Luiyue thought for a moment. Suddenly, a thought flashed through her mind. If Taizu's soul was still there, then, when she refined Scarlet Heaven Sword's soul, did that mean that Taizu would have a chance to take over her body and come back to life? She took a deep breath and suppressed this thought. It would not be too late to think about everything after the refinement was completed. Girl, step back a little. Taizu stood in the air with a serious expression. Chu Luiyue took 5 steps back. Her eyes were fixed on the star stone and Scarlet Heaven sword that was placed on it. Taizu raised his hands, and the aura around him began to surge crazily. A powerful aura spread out in all directions. Soon, dark clouds gathered in the sky. The originally bright moon was covered by thick clouds, and the world became darker and darker. There were rolling mountains all around, and it was silent. Only the sound of the wind passed through the mountains, and the forest rustled. Chu Luiyue's heart seemed to be gripped by something, and her ears were filled with the sound of her heart beating violently. The wind and clouds whistled. Dark clouds surged. Finally, a bright bolt of heavenly lightning shot out from behind the accumulated layers of clouds. Then, a second one. A third one. Chu Luiyue sucked in a breath of cold air. The speed of Tianlei's appearance was far beyond her imagination. Who knew how many Tianlei's tempering would be needed to refine a venerable divine weapon's soul? Such a scene was far from what she could compare to when she forged the Cloud Sky Copper Sword. Almost at the same time, Rongxiu, who had just laid down, suddenly opened his eyes. He lifted the blanket and jumped down from the bed. He pushed open the door and looked toward the top of the mountain. Several Tianlei were circling in the sky, swimming wildly. He narrowed his eyes, and then raised his hand. A golden stream of light flew out, transforming into countless light spots, and landed on the barrier outside Mount Jiuheng. The barrier strengthened again, and completely concealed everything that was happening inside. Chu Luiyue was completely unaware of this, because all her attention was on the Tianlei that was about to land. In a short time, dozens of silver snake-like Tianlei had gathered in the dark clouds. Most importantly, the number was still increasing. Back then, in order to forge the Dragon Abyss sword, I triggered a total of 81 Tianlei. Now that the Scarlet Cloud sword is a venerable divine weapon, I don't know how big of a commotion it will cause. Taizu said in a low voice as he triggered the Tianlei. Chu Luiyue's eyelids twitched violently. The Scarlet Cloud sword was 2 grades higher than the Dragon Abyss sword, and there was a huge gap between them. It was simply unimaginable to fill the gap between them. The black star stone reflected the numerous Tianlei in the sky, and the stars flickered. Finally, when the stars covered it, the scarlet cloud sword finally rose slowly into the air. It floated quietly above the star stone, and its entire body emitted a shocking aura. It had not officially started yet, but Chu Luiyue already felt as if her heart was being heavily pressed by something, and even breathing became difficult. I wonder what kind of scene it would be when the Tianlei landed. Just as this thought flashed through her mind, she heard a loud sound coming from the sky. Boom! A thick and dazzling bolt of heavenly lightning struck down in an instant. It went straight for the scarlet cloud sword. Chu Luiyue was almost blinded by the dazzling light. Following that, loud rumbling sounds rang out one after another. Boom! Boom! It was those Tianlei that struck down one after another. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1241. Chu Luiyue had never seen such a scene before. Countless Tianlei surged over crazily as if they were free. Like a huge silver sword, it broke through the clouds and slashed down from the sky. Looking up, it was as if it was going to split the heavens and earth. The light was dazzling and the sound was earth-shattering. The powerful impact almost sent Chu Luiyue flying. She immediately stabbed the long yuan sword into the ground. She clenched her fists tightly to prevent herself from being swept away by the wind. Her clothes fluttered in the wind, and only the crazy whistling sound was left in her ears. The great ancestor's expression was unprecedentedly serious and solemn. Because from the moment he saw those Tianlei appear, he knew that today would be a tough battle. He was afraid that this would be the most powerful Tianlei that he had ever summoned in his life. After those Tianlei fell, new Tianlei quickly appeared. Taizu's power was quickly consumed in the crazy and terrifying tempering process. At such times seemed to be especially difficult to endure. Just as Chu Luiyue felt that her face was about to be cut by that terrifying power, the scarlet cloud sword finally moved. A golden light appeared on the scabbard. It flashed quietly. The surrounding Tianlei's light was very dazzling, but when this golden light appeared, it did not cover up even a fraction of its brilliance. Chu Luiyue saw clearly that it was the golden pattern on the scabbard that exploded with bright light. Girl! Go! Great Ancestor bellowed. Chu Luiyue immediately leaped. She grabbed the hilt of the scarlet cloud sword. Countless silver lights flashed on the scabbard. The hilt was cold, but the power of the Tianlei was boiling. The two extreme powers merged together. Chu Luiyue gritted her teeth and grabbed the sword tightly. A familiar aura gradually surged into her heart. It was the sword spirit of the Long Yuan sword. In order to refine it into an artifact soul, Scarlet Heaven's sword had to withstand the beating of these Tianlei. For some reason, the Tianlei people avoided Chu Luiyue when they passed by him. This relieved her of a lot of pressure. As the Tianlei continued to fall, a seal on the scabbard seemed to be peeling off. The runes that had been silent for 1,000 years finally began to emit their original golden light. Chu Luiyue gripped the hilt of her sword with both hands, allowing the violent energy to surge around her, but she remained unmoved. A wisp of origin power quietly poured into Scarlet Heaven's sword. Time seemed to have become particularly unbearable. After an unknown period of time, Chu Luiyue's hands had become numb from the terrifying power. The power in his body was almost impossible to suppress, and there were faint signs that it was about to go berserk. However, Tianlei was still striking down. It seemed like it would never end. Chu Luiyue forced his eyes open and looked up. In the bright silver light that filled the sky, she almost couldn't see anything clearly. This meant that Tianlei's attack was far from over. She gritted her teeth and tried her best to circulate the origin power in her body. More and more power was poured into Scarlet Heaven's sword, and the golden runes on the scabbard became clearer. She could clearly feel that the subtle connection between her and Scarlet Heaven's sword was also constantly strengthening. As long as she persevered until the end, she would definitely succeed. However, at this moment, a sudden and strange fluctuation came from behind her. Chu Luiyue looked back, and through the flickering light, she was shocked to see Taizu kneeling on the ground as if his strength was exhausted. His body became much more illusory, as if he would be blown away by the wind at any time. His face was even paler, and his originally spirited face seemed to have aged a lot in an instant. Chu Luiyue's heart clenched. "Taizu," she shouted nervously. "How are you?" Hearing her voice, Taizu forced himself to stand up. I'm fine. It's just that there's too much Tianlei, and I've consumed too much energy." Hearing the weakness in his voice, Chu Luiyue became even more worried. Although Taizu did not have a physical body, his strength was tyrannical. This was the first time she had seen him so weak. It was really worrying. Boom! 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 Tianlei was still falling one after another. And Taizu's aura was weakening at a speed visible to the naked eye. Chu Luiyue quickly glanced at Scarlet Heaven's sword. Only 1/3 of the runes on the scabbard had lit up. This couldn't go on. Chu Luiyue thought calmly. Looking at Taizu's current state, he definitely wouldn't be able to hold on until the end. Scarlet Heaven's sword was a venerable artifact. In order to refine the sword's soul into an artifact's soul, the number of Tianlei needed was astonishing. It was indeed impossible to complete it with Taizu's strength alone. Chu Luiyue didn't want to disregard Taizu's life for this. "Taizu, please stop triggering Tianlei immediately." Chu Luiyue quickly made a decision and shouted loudly. Of course, Taizu refused. No. What kind of treasure was a venerable artifact? It was a great opportunity for this girl to be lucky enough to obtain it. Many people wouldn't even be able to see it once in their lifetime, but she was so lucky to obtain it. How could he not cherish it? Even if he had to exhaust the last bit of his strength, he had to help her to the end. Then, Taizu calmed down, raised his chi, and flew up. In the gloomy sky, several more bolts of heavenly lightning appeared. The wind howled, and Taizu's figure seemed to be on the verge of collapse. Chu Luiyue watched from below, extremely nervous and distressed. She knew very well that Taizu was already close to his limit. If he didn't stop, the consequences would be unimaginable. This was not Taizu's remnant divine sense, but his true soul. If anything happened to him today, he would really be consigned to eternal damnation. Chu Luiyue's chest seemed to be burning with flames, and a trace of scarlet appeared in her eyes. "Taizu, please return." Taizu stood in midair, his body straight. He didn't look back. In the dark and dazzling world, he seemed to be alone. As time passed, Taizu's aura became weaker and weaker. Gradually, no more Tianlei appeared in the sky. Taizu's heart sank. According to his realm, even if he risked his life, he wouldn't be able to summon enough Tianlei. Boom! The last Tianlei struck. Taizu's face turned pale. He finally turned around and looked at Chu Luiyue. His expression was apologetic, and his lips trembled. It's Taizu's fault for being useless." Chu Luiyue shook her head. "You've done your best. You can't thank you enough." At this moment, only half of the patterns on Scarlet Heaven's sword lit up. Chu Luiyue closed her eyes. When he opened his eyes again, there seemed to be undercurrents and flames burning in his black jade-like eyes. She gripped Scarlet Heaven's sword tightly and immediately stood up. Most of her body had already been affected by that terrifying power, and she couldn't feel anything. At this moment, she was only relying on her last bit of willpower to hold Scarlet Heaven's sword tightly. Taizu let out a long sigh. Unfortunately, It's a waste of energy this time, Chu Luiyue said, not necessarily. Taizu was stunned. What other ways do you have? Chu Luiyue narrowed her eyes and looked in a certain direction. Tianlei, there was a place that had plenty of places. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1242. Chu Luiyue looked up. Outside Jiuheng Mountain, a faint golden barrier flickered quietly in the dark night. Her heart skipped a beat, and she turned to look at a certain place at the foot of the mountain. A tall figure was flying over at a high speed. It was Rong Xiu. He was extremely fast, and in the blink of an eye, he had arrived in front of her from afar. The two of them looked at each other. Chu Luiyue said, "I'm going to Thousand Wine Mountain." Rong Xiu nodded slightly, "I'll accompany you." There was no need for any explanation. With just a look, they could understand each other's intentions and thoughts. Chu Luiyue's heart warmed, and her pale lips curled up slightly. "Aren't you going to ask me what I'm going to do?" Rong Xiu raised his eyebrows. "That's not important. As long as you want to go, I'll go with you." As he spoke, his gaze swept across the scarlet heaven sword in Chu Luiyue's hand. "Follow me." As soon as he finished speaking, he waved his wrist, and the barrier on the mountain top suddenly rippled. Immediately, an exit opened. His figure moved, and he took the lead to charge out. Chu Luiyue followed closely behind. After the two of them left, the barrier quickly closed up, concealing everything silently. From the outside, it was as if nothing had happened. It was late at night, and the entire academy was silent. The two of them set off from Jiuheng Mountain and went straight to Thousand Wine Mountain. Rong Xiu seemed to be very familiar with that place, and he almost didn't stop on the way. Because he was worried that the fluctuations of Scarlet Heaven's sword would attract attention, he deliberately set up a barrier around Chu Luiyue to completely conceal her aura. Just like that, the two of them successfully arrived at the foot of Thousand Wine Mountain. In the dark night, the barrier on Thousand Wine Mountain was almost invisible. From the outside, one could only see the undulating peaks and the shadows of the trees and forests. The surroundings were silent. However, Chu Luiyue's heart was beating rapidly. The Scarlet Heaven sword in her hand emitted a strange fluctuation. She lowered her head to take a look. The silver tianlei that originally covered it had almost disappeared. As for the half of the golden veins that had been lit up with much difficulty, it also showed signs of fainting. This was because the amount of tianlei he had summoned was too little, and he hadn't been able to completely refine the sword's soul into an artifact soul. That was why it was stuck in the middle, neither moving up nor down. If he couldn't make up for it in time, not only would this refinement fail, everything he had experienced before would be in vain. Therefore, he absolutely could not give up. Chu Luiyue looked up at the barrier in front of him. A vast pressure spread out from within. Ever since the incident with her, the Academy's elders seemed to have strengthened the barrier around the Thousand Wine Mountain. In her current state, it was impossible for her to break in. Fortunately, there was still Rong Xiu. He stood in front of the barrier and raised his hand. A few golden rays of light flew out and formed a strange profound formation in the air. That small golden profound formation lightly stuck onto the barrier. Wang! An entrance quickly appeared. Chu Luiyue couldn't hide her surprise as she looked at Rong Xiu. Seeing that his expression was normal and his eyes were calm, she finally couldn't help but ask. "Rong Xiu, this isn't the first time you've done this, right? This technique, no matter how you look at it, it's so familiar." Rong Xiu's thin lips curled up slightly as he glanced at her with a faint smile. "I learned it from you." Chu Luiyue, what did she do in the academy in the past? And from Rong Xiu's words, it seemed like she had led him astray. "Go up, I'll tell you about this later. Or, just like the matter of the herb garden, she would unknowingly recall it. Rong Xiao said as he stepped into the barrier. Chu Luiyue took a deep breath and went in with her sword. After entering the barrier, Chu Luiyue's first reaction was to look up at the top of the mountain. As expected, there was a figure standing at the highest point of the mountain. Above the sky, dark clouds gathered as Tianlei flashed and struck down continuously. From the looks of it, he seemed to be refining weapons. Those Tianlei, some fell in front of him, while some fell into the spring. Even though they were separated by such a distance, Chu Luiyue could still feel the astonishing power contained in those Tianlei. She licked her pale and cracked lips. This was what she needed the most now. However, that person seemed to be an elder of the academy. It wouldn't be appropriate for her to barge in directly. However, just as Chu Luiyue was thinking hard about how to negotiate with that person, the Scarlet Heaven sword in her hand suddenly flew out. Swoosh! The Scarlet Heaven sword drew a faint golden line in the air. In the blink of an eye, it had already rushed to the top of the mountain. Chu Luiyue was shocked, and she immediately followed him without thinking. She had only pondered for a moment when the Scarlet Heaven sword seized this opportunity and directly escaped from her hand. And it was heading straight for the top of the mountain. No! It was heading for the Tianlei. Chu Luiyue had already used her full speed, but no matter how powerful she was, could she be faster than a venerable artifact? Soon, under her shocked gaze, the Scarlet Heaven sword rushed up. Those Tianlei seemed to have sensed something and suddenly turned around and slashed down at it. Boom boom boom. The sound shook the sky. Flames shot in all directions. Chu Luiyue was almost unable to open her eyes because of the dazzling light. She could only endure the pain and stare at it. The Tianlei that were supposed to fall were all intercepted by the Scarlet Heaven sword halfway. Shang Yusin was originally focused on refining when he suddenly sensed an abnormal energy fluctuation. He suddenly looked in that direction, but he only saw something flash past. Then, several bolts of heavenly lightning exploded above his head. Boom! Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 1243. Shang Yusin's first reaction was to set up a barrier around himself. The terrifying power of the explosion was completely blocked outside. Even so, the Tianlei was right above his head. The distance was extremely close, and it was impossible to completely avoid it. That shocking aura rushed over, causing his chest to feel stuffy, and he almost knelt on the ground. However, he still forced himself to stand and quickly looked up. At this moment, he finally saw clearly what had happened. The heavenly lightning that was supposed to descend had been completely intercepted by a sword that had appeared out of nowhere. Silver light flickered on it, and sparks flew everywhere. Bang! The sound of something exploding was heard. Shang Yusin looked down and saw that the yuan instrument that he had painstakingly forged had cracked because the Tianlei's tempering had been interrupted and the change in temperature was too great. Shang Yusin raised his eyebrows and threw the item on the ground. He couldn't help but shout. Who the F***ck did this? His shout was like thunder, instantly reverberating throughout the myriad wine mountain. Chu Luiyue paused and felt a little guilty. She had originally planned to bring Scarlet Heaven's sword here and wait for the Tianlei in the spring to gather again before putting it in for tempering. Who knew that things would develop like this? At this moment, Shang Yusin also noticed Chu Luiyue's existence and looked over with his sharp eyes. Who? Come out! As he shouted, he angrily rushed over, intending to arrest her. Seeing that the other party was rushing down, Chu Luiyue knew that she couldn't hide, so she quickly stood out. Student Chu Yu greets elder. Only then did Shang Yusin see the person in front of him clearly. This was a youth who looked no more than 16 or 17 years old. His figure was thin and slender, and his face was delicate and clean. His face was a little pale, and there was a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. It was obvious that he had just been through trouble. Shang Yusin shouted angrily. At this time, all students in the academy are forbidden from stepping into Myriad Wine Mountain. Don't you know? Chu Luiyue thought that of course she knew, and this was not the first time she had committed a crime. She raised her eyes slightly and looked over the shoulder of the middle-aged man in front of her. In the air, Scarlet Heaven's sword was continuously swallowing the Tianlei that was falling from the sky. Moreover, there were quite a few of them in Tianlei, which showed that this person was not weak. She was slightly relieved and bowed to admit her mistake. Elder is right. I didn't do it on purpose. It was just a moment of desperation that I accidentally barged in. Don't tell me these useless things. When Shang Yusin thought of the incomplete divine artifact that he had destroyed, he couldn't help but feel angry. He had been in Lingxiao College for so many years, but this had never happened before. A student. He had actually barged into the Thousand Wine Mountain just like that, even interrupting his refining process and intercepting his Tianlei. He must have eaten a bear's heart and leopard's gall. I think you're going against the heavens. You immediately put away that broken thing of yours. Then, ask your master to come over and apologize to me personally. Chu Luiyue was stunned for a moment and felt a little troubled. Scarlet Heaven's sword had rushed out by itself just now. It would not be that easy for her to put it away now. Besides, she had come for the Tianlei of the Thousand Wine Mountain. It was not easy for her to find it, so how could she just leave like that? As for asking her master to come over, she wondered what Elder Wan Zhang's expression would be if he heard this news. Chu Luiyue hesitated for a moment, then revealed an apologetic and earnest smile. Elder, what happened today was really purely an accident. I know that I was wrong and the consequences are serious. There is no reason for me to escape punishment no matter what. But, can you please wait for a while? Shang Yusin raised his eyebrows and glared at her. Wait? Wait for what? Chu Luiyue paused for a moment, then stretched out a finger and pointed upwards. She lowered her voice and said that, just, wait for me to finish refining the Yuan instrument. Shang Yusin was so angry that he almost laughed. He had never seen a student like this before. Not only did she make a mistake, but she also took advantage of him. She was about to die, but she still had the nerve to ask for conditions. Ha! He sized up Chu Luiyue again. All right. Kid, you're young, but you've got guts. What kind of treasure is that Yuan instrument of yours? You even dared to snatch the Tianlei that I triggered. Suddenly, his voice stopped abruptly, and the way he stared at Chu Luiyue changed. Chu Luiyue felt inexplicably guilty and could not help but ask. Elder, why are you looking at me like that? Shang Yusin narrowed his eyes. What did you say your name was? Chu Luiyue answered honestly. Chu Yu. It's really you. Shang Yusin's mouth twitched. He was too agitated just now, so he did not hear or pay attention to Chu Luiyue's self-introduction. It was only after taking a closer look that he felt a little familiar. Chu Yu. Wasn't that the kid he and Bo Yan were talking about during the day? Chu Luiyue blinked. The elders of Lingxiao College basically knew her by now. But this seemed to be the first time they met. And, she also felt that this face was a little unfamiliar, as if she had never seen it before. If I remember correctly, you were locked up in Mount Pingmin for trespassing on Mount Wanzhou, right? How long has it been since you came out? As Shang Yusin spoke, he suddenly thought of something and turned around abruptly. Wait! That thing, is that the divine artifact that I took back from Blue Feather's abyss. The item that Chuyu brought with him, which was powerful enough to intercept his Tianlei, seemed to be that. Cough, Elder is wise. Chu Liyue smiled awkwardly and said very honestly and uneasily, I'm sorry. I really don't have any other intentions this time. I just want to borrow a few Tianlei. Digression. Dear friends of the September list, please join the group as soon as possible for verification. The list will be updated on the 7th. After the comments section is opened, it will also be pinned. In addition, from today until the morning of the 13th, there will be a super huge event in the comments section. For details, please see pinned. Other readers other than Xiaoxiang can also participate in the event. Thank you Big Pair mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1244. Shang Yusin thought that he was hallucinating. What did you say? He gritted his teeth and asked word by word. Every word seemed to be squeezed out from the gaps between his teeth, with a hint of gnashing teeth. Chu Liyue shrank her neck. There was nothing she could do. She had snatched his things, so she felt guilty. But there was really nothing she could do about this. Who knew that he was refining here? Besides, after she came here, she didn't do anything, and Scarlet Heaven's sword ran out on its own. It wasn't all her fault. However, she didn't dare to say such words of justification again. And it seemed that it was useless to say it. She lowered her head. This student knows her mistake. This sincere appearance of admitting her mistake made Shang Yusin unable to vent his anger. Humph. You're quite promising. Borrow Tianlei. To think that you can say that. Shang Yusin flicked his sleeve and looked back at the top of the mountain. In the Tianlei that was constantly hacking down, a long sword could be vaguely seen. That Scarlet Heaven sword. He narrowed his eyes and asked. Chu Liyue was a little surprised that he actually recognized the sword, but on second thought, after all, he was an elder of the academy, so it wasn't strange for him to know this. After all, this was a divine artifact refined by the academy's ancestors, and that notebook had always been kept in the academy. Yes. You got lucky, kid. Shang Yusin snorted. He had been thinking about this thing for so many years, but he never got to see it. Who would have thought that he would miss it during a short period of seclusion? The key was that Scarlet Heaven's sword had recognized a master. A venerable divine artifact recognizing a master. It wasn't that simple. He didn't know how this kid did it. Chu Liyue lowered her head even more. This student is guilty. She vaguely sensed that this elder's attitude towards Scarlet Heaven's sword seemed to be a little different from the other elders. Elder Bo Yen, and even Elder Xu Feng, who had personally gone to snatch Scarlet Heaven's sword back then, didn't seem to know so much about Scarlet Heaven's sword. Is it tempering its soul? Shang Yusin's next word surprised Chu Liyue. But on second thought, the other party was a blacksmith in the first place, and his rank wasn't too low either. It wasn't too surprising that he would be able to see through it with a single glance. Elder's insight is truly admirable. Humph, you don't have to flatter me. To be honest, I am much more familiar with this Scarlet Heaven sword than you are. Unfortunately, he was not fated to do so. Since the venerable artifact could recognize a new owner, it meant that there was no artifact soul inside. Thinking back to what Bo Yen had told him before, he could more or less guess what was going on. The sword soul had been transferred to the venerable divine artifact that lacked an artifact soul, forcing it to recognize him as its master. Such a situation was 1 in a million, but it really happened. This really made it impossible for anyone to be jealous. Why are you still standing here? Why aren't you going up? Shang Yusin shot a disdainful glance at Chu Luiyue. Don't tell me you can't even do this. Chu Luiyue was stunned for a moment before he realized that he was urging him. Didn't he want to teach him a lesson just a moment ago? Why did he suddenly seem so supportive now? Elder, you don't mind? Chu Luiyue asked tentatively. Why are you being so wishy-washy? If I mind, didn't you already take Tianlei away? Shang Yusin simply wanted to take action. This kid looked quite smart, but why was he so stupid at the critical moment? The yuan instrument that he wanted to refine was already damaged and could not be salvaged. There was no use in regretting it. On the other hand, the Scarlet Heaven sword was at an extremely important juncture. If any problems occurred during the process of refining the artifact's soul, it could lead to failure. Why aren't you going? Are you going to watch such a treasure be destroyed? Shang Yusin finally could not hold back. He grabbed Chu Luiyue's shoulder and pushed him hard. Hurry up and go. Chu Luiyue did not hesitate anymore. Thank you, Elder. With that, he tapped his toes and quickly flew toward the top of the mountain. Shang Yusin raised his head to take a look. The number of Tianlei in the sky was decreasing. Those were all summoned when he wanted to refine the artifact. The process was interrupted, so the rest naturally did not appear. The previous ones were consumed extremely quickly. At this time, only half of them were left. However, until now, there was still no big movement on the Scarlet Heaven sword. This also meant that there was still a long way to go before it could refine the artifact's soul. Shang Yusin looked for a while and could not help but snort coldly. I still have to do it. Troublesome. With that, he stomped heavily on the ground and soared into the sky. Chu Luiyue rushed to the top of the mountain. The Scarlet Heaven sword was floating in midair. Nearly 2/3 of the golden patterns on the scabbard had already appeared. However, the aura around the sword seemed to have become much more chaotic, and there was a faint tendency for it to go berserk. Girl, you must hold this sword well. If you don't control it well, the artifact's soul might be unable to suppress it and cause the entire process to fail. Although Taizu's voice was weak, it was exceptionally serious. Although this was not refining artifacts, it was extremely difficult to refine the artifact's soul of a venerable artifact. Chu Luiyue nodded. I know. She held her breath and stepped forward. Passing through the countless flashing lightning, she held the Scarlet Heaven sword in her hand again. Then, she continued to pour her force into it. The effect was immediate. Soon, the violent aura around the Scarlet Heaven sword calmed down again. That familiar and subtle feeling of connection was gradually increasing. All of a sudden, Tuanzi ran out of her body and plunged into the spring below. Splash! Chu Luiyue looked down. Ripples appeared on the calm water surface, but she could still see countless Tianlei swimming crazily in it. Boom! Another loud sound was heard. Chu Luiyue was shocked and quickly looked up. She saw that several Tianlei had appeared in the sky that had gradually calmed down. Between heaven and earth, wind and thunder rumbled. A figure stood in the air. It was Shang Yusin. His clothes fluttered and his sleeves waved. The aura around him surged crazily, and his might was impressive. As he did this, more and more Tianlei appeared in the sky. Chu Luiyue instantly understood. He was helping her to trigger the Tianlei. Chu Luiyue's heart was filled with gratitude. Thank you, Elder. Shang Yusin did not even turn his head and shouted, What are you thanking me for? Focus on refining the artifact's soul. If you fail, I'll teach you a lesson. He had spent so much effort to help, and he would not allow failure. Chu Luiyue could not help but smile. Without saying anything else, she retracted her gaze and focused all her attention on the Scarlet Heaven sword. Finally, the scabbard loosened a little. Chu Liuyue's heart skipped a beat, and she gripped the hilt tightly. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1245. At this time, the entire top of Thousand Wine Mountain was enveloped by a dazzling silver Tianlei. Amidst the rumbling of the flames, it was almost impossible to see the situation inside. One could only vaguely see Shang Yusin floating in the air. As for the place where the heavenly lightning gathered, only a slender figure could be vaguely seen. Seeing this scene, Rongxiu stopped not far away. He had originally planned to help, but since someone had made a move first, he would just wait and see. It seemed that everything was going smoothly, however, this harmonious scene was quickly broken. Because someone else had come. Elder Ouyang had heard that Shang Yusin had come out of seclusion and was planning to refine weapons at Thousand Wine Mountain at night, so he wanted to come and take a look. However, as soon as he stepped into the barrier, he realized that something was wrong. This fluctuation was too shocking. He looked up almost immediately and was stunned by the scene in front of him. Tianlei kept striking down, but it was not aimed at Shang Yusin. However, Shang Yusin, who was standing in the air, was indeed triggering Tianlei. What's going on? Elder Ouyang wanted to go forward without saying anything. Suddenly, a figure appeared from the side and blocked his path. Elder Ouyang, please wait. The deep and familiar voice stunned Elder Ouyang. When he saw the person in front of him clearly, his eyes widened in shock. Rongxiu. Why are you here? Rongxiu smiled. I just arrived too. I'm waiting for someone. Elder Ouyang looked at the top of the mountain suspiciously. Who are you waiting for? There was no point in lying at this time. Anyway, he would find out in the end, so Rongxiu was very honest. Chu Yu. Chu Yu. Elder Ouyang's eyelids twitched. He was very familiar with this name. Wasn't this the kid who had just caused a ruckus here a while ago? He reacted for a moment, and his expression became extremely interesting. He pointed at the blurry figure on the top of the mountain in disbelief. You mean, that's Chu Yu? Rongxiu nodded and explained in a gentle voice, she's busy right now and shouldn't be distracted. Elder Ouyang, please be considerate and go there later. Elder Ouyang, do you have something to do? On this Thousand Wine Mountain, there was so much Tianlei. Wasn't it obvious what that kid was busy with? What is he doing now? Elder Ouyang was so agitated that he started to stutter. Oh, right. And that guy Shang Yusin. What is he doing now? Chu Yu's absurdity was one thing, but why did Shang Yusin seem to be helping? Elder Ouyang was confused. He was in a bad mood. You can ask them when they come down, said Rongxiu with a smile. Elder Ouyang was also a weapon refiner, so he naturally understood that outsiders should not disturb them at this time. Otherwise, if something really happened, it would be hard to salvage the situation. Therefore, even if he felt that this scene was very strange, he could only suppress his anger and wait. This kid was punished once because he stayed in Thousand Wine Mountain during the forbidden time. Logically speaking, he shouldn't do it again in a short period of time. Today, he appeared again. Did he not learn his lesson, or did you embolden him? Elder Ouyang looked at Rongxiu suspiciously. A faint light flashed across Rongxiu's deep eyes, and his thin lips curled slightly. Nothing can escape Elder Ouyang's eyes. Humph. It's really you. Elder Ouyang flicked his sleeves. Previously, they said that you valued this Chu Yu very much, but I didn't take it seriously. Now it seems that it's true. If it was an ordinary person, Rongxiu would never have brought him to Thousand Wine Mountain at this time. Seeing Rongxiu smiling without saying anything, Elder Ouyang couldn't help but raise his voice. Rongxiu, it's true that you can come and go here at will, but that kid can't. Don't think that Chuyu can escape punishment with your help. Not only did he knowingly break the law, but he also did it again and again. If he didn't teach him a profound lesson this time, he would really be lawless in the future. Rongxiu thought that if the punishment was still in Guanpingmin Mountain, she would probably be very happy to hear it. But he still had to give her face. So, he seemed to nod in agreement. Elder Ouyang is right. Elder Ouyang was depressed when he saw that Chuyu was stubborn and unmoved by force or persuasion. Chuyu was obviously not very old, but he was very shrewd and thoughtful. Even at his age, he couldn't see through Rongxiu's thoughts. Just like now. Rongxiu made it clear that he was on Chuyu's side. Not only did he bring Chuyu in during the forbidden time, but he also allowed him to do so on the top of the mountain. The mouth of the spring was right there. But Rongxiu's behavior made it impossible for him to really get angry. Because he was Rongxiu. Elder Ouyang glared at him. It's not wrong for you to protect that Chuyu. But you have to make it clear to me first. What is that kid doing up there now? Rongxiu paused. Now he's holding the divine weapon that appeared in the Dark Feather's abyss. Elder Ouyang was stunned for a moment, but he immediately understood. The weapon's soul. That divine weapon was not ordinary, so of course he had heard about it. It was just that he was too excited just now to remember it in time. But now that Rongxiu reminded him, he immediately understood. Chuyu was going to refine the weapon's soul for that divine weapon. No wonder. She couldn't even trigger the heavenly lightning with her own strength, so why didn't she come here? Shang Yusin also had a problem, but he was still doing his best to help. He still hasn't changed his mind about that thing. Elder Ouyang rolled his eyes. Even if he thought with his toes, he knew that Shang Yusin was definitely going for that divine weapon. Boom! 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 Another earth-shattering sound. The entire Thousand Wine Mountain was as bright as day. As those Tianlei continued to fall, the golden patterns on Scarlet Heaven's sword gradually appeared after being refined over and over again. Chu Luyue held the sword hilt tightly with both hands, held his breath, and stared at the scabbard. Finally, the last pattern lit up. Swoosh! The eyes of the dragon head on the sword hilt suddenly burned with flames. One gold, one blue. It was like a dragon that had been sleeping for a long time had finally woken up. Roar! The dragon's roar roared. It resounded throughout the world. Chu Luyue gritted his teeth and pulled the sword hilt with all his might. Clang! The sword body finally separated from the scabbard. At this moment, all the Tianlei in the sky suddenly fell together. Shang Yusin's heart skipped a beat. There was not enough Tianlei. He immediately turned around and shouted at Elder Ouyang, Ouyang. Don't waste your breath. Come up and help. Elder Ouyang was stunned for a moment. Is he calling me? Shang Yusin raised his voice, hurry up. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1246. The corner of Elder Ouyang's mouth twitched. It was fine that Shang Yusin wanted to help Chuyu, but now he was calling him over. What was going on? But looking at the situation in the sky, it was indeed very urgent. Elder Ouyang clenched his fists. Helping you this time, I'll get it back later. After saying that, he finally moved and rushed into the air. On the top of the mountain, Chu Liuyue's figure was already covered by countless Tianlei and could not be seen at all. The night sky was dark, and all the Tianlei had just struck down. But the artifact's soul was obviously not completed yet, and he had to continue to attract more Tianlei. Elder Ouyang stood in the air with his hands crossed in front of him. An astonishing aura instantly enveloped him. Swish! He pointed to the sky. Soon, a loud sound came from the layers of rolling dark clouds. A silver Tianlei appeared again. With this one, the appearance of the heavenly lightning after that became logical. After a while, the sky was once again illuminated by several intertwined Tianlei. Only then did Shang Yusin finally heave a sigh of relief. If he was a little later, he was afraid that he would not be able to make it. The closer it was to the end, the more he could not relax. He looked down and couldn't help but murmur, "This kid, so many Tianlei, how did he get through it? Wasn't Chuyu only a rank 7 warrior now?" Even if these Tianlei went straight for the artifact, he would be more or less affected by it if he stood next to it. Moreover, he was the new owner of Scarlet Heaven's sword and was responsible for guiding these forces to temper its soul. The consumption of his strength and spirit was also extremely terrifying. If it were other cultivators of the same level, they would have already fallen to the ground. But Chuyu seemed to be very stable from the beginning to the end. I heard that he even defeated a rank 8 warrior some time ago as a rank 7 warrior. No wonder Elder Meng was so concerned. At first, he didn't take Chuyu too seriously and only thought that he was a little kid who knew how to cause trouble and was a little smart. But it wasn't until now that he realized that this Chuyu did have some ability. The dragon roared. The powerful pressure almost made Chu Luyue breathless. She madly circulated the force in her body and slowly pulled out the sword. From the part of it that had appeared, it could be seen that it was a silver sword. It was about 3 fingers wide, with 2 sharp edges and a thick middle. Just by looking at it, one could clearly feel the sharp and cold aura coming from it. Chu Luyue's heart was beating violently, and all he could hear was the sound of his blood flowing. Even though he had not completely drawn it out, Chu Luyue was already certain that this red cloud sword was more than 100 times stronger than the Long Yuan sword. That was an incomparable power. Occasionally, there would be some silver heavenly lightning flashing across it. However, the power of Tianlei, which was originally filled with a powerful aura, would be instantly devoured or annihilated the moment it landed on the sword. In front of Scarlet Heaven, even Tianlei paled in comparison. Chu Luyue could no longer remember how many Tianlei it had digested. However, as time passed, she gradually felt that something seemed to be condensing in Scarlet Heaven's sword. And the subtle connection between it and her became stronger and stronger. It was so strong that, at this moment, she could even faintly sense how much power Tianlei had been devoured by Scarlet Heaven's sword. A venerable artifact, seizing the power of endless Tianlei, tempering the artifact's soul. From this, one could see how powerful it was. At this moment, the few people on Thousand Wine Mountain were focused on Scarlet Heaven's sword. However, not far below Chu Luyue, some strange changes were also happening in the small spring. The calm water rippled slightly, and countless silver Tianlei gathered under the water, swimming and interweaving. A red figure was buried in it. It was Dumpling. The surrounding heavenly lightning continued to wander around its body. And the aura on its body was also quietly changing. Scarlet Heaven's sword was consuming Tianlei faster and faster. Not long after, Elder Ouyang noticed that the number of Tianlei in the sky was decreasing. He couldn't help but look back. Why is it so difficult to temper the artifact's soul with this thing? The speed at which he attracted Tianlei couldn't keep up with the speed at which it was devouring. Shang Yusin also noticed this situation and couldn't help but frown. Scarlet Heaven's sword was more powerful than he had expected. It needed more Tianlei to continuously temper it. But now, he was already an arrow at the end of its flight, and Ouyang's situation might not be any better. Perhaps, even if the two of them tried their best, it still wouldn't be enough. At this moment, a tall and slender figure silently appeared in midair. Rong Xiu glanced at the sky. His expression was very calm. Then, he gently raised his hand. Boom! Almost in the blink of an eye, several Tianlei quickly gathered behind the clouds. These Tianlei didn't hesitate at all and slashed straight down. In an instant, it was as if silver swords were raining down. Elder Ouyang and Shang Yusin both looked back in shock. Damn it, when did Rongxiu become so strong? Shang Yusin couldn't help but curse. Elder Ouyang also swallowed his saliva with difficulty. How would I know? It had only been a few years, and Rongxiu had already broken through to such a level. At this moment, Chu Liyue finally completely pulled Scarlet Heaven's sword out of its scabbard. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1247. The moment the long sword was unsheathed, there seemed to be a layer of invisible barriers shattering. An aura that seemed to come from a distant time and space instantly rushed out of the Scarlet Heaven sword and entered Chu Liyue's body. It was as if there was a thread connecting her to the Scarlet Heaven sword. The Scarlet Heaven sword, which was originally extremely heavy, suddenly became as light as a feather at this moment. Chu Liyue's previous internal injuries also began to rapidly recover under the nourishment of this vast and gentle power. That aura was familiar, but also unfamiliar. It was familiar because it was mixed with the power of the sword's soul of the Dragon Abyss sword. Vaguely, it also seemed to have the aura of Taizu. As for the unfamiliar, that was the original power of the Scarlet Heaven sword. She looked at the Scarlet Heaven sword in her hand, and something seemed to surge in her heart. In the next moment, she swung her sword, a terrifying sword chi swept forward. After a short silence, a large number of trees in front of her were cut in half. When those trees fell together, Chu Liyue realized what had happened and couldn't help but widen her eyes slightly. She just wanted to give it a try subconsciously. It was just a light wave, but how could it produce such a terrifying power? At a glance, all the trees that could be seen had been silently cut down. But this was not the end. Because these trees were unable to block this sword chi. Therefore, after it swept through the lush forest, its speed did not decrease at all and it headed straight for the barrier of the Thousand Wine Mountain. Stop it! Elder Ouyang was shocked and hurriedly shouted. Shang Yusin was about to move when he saw a figure flash past his eyes. It was Rongxiu. He raised his wrist and a golden stream of light flew out quickly. Boom! The speed of this force was extremely fast. It caught up from behind and finally managed to stop the sword chi before it could hit the barrier. The two forces collided fiercely and produced an explosive sound. The barrier was impacted by the aftershock and shook violently. Elder Ouyang trembled with fear when he saw this. He hurriedly rushed over. He often came to the Thousand Wine Mountain, so he was very familiar with this and quickly strengthened the barrier. After confirming that the barrier was no longer in danger of being damaged, he let out a long sigh of relief. If the barrier was broken, everyone would know what had happened on Thousand Wine Mountain. It wouldn't be good if things got out of hand. Thinking of this, he became angry again. He raised his eyebrows and glared at Chu Liyue, grinding his teeth. Chu Yu. You better give me an explanation. Chu Liyue touched his nose and carefully put away the Scarlet Heaven sword. With a thought, Scarlet Heaven's sword directly went to her dantian. In this way, she could still clearly sense all the movements on Scarlet Heaven's sword. This made her believe that Scarlet Heaven's sword's soul had been completely tempered, and it had indeed completely recognized her as its master. Her heart, which had been hanging in the air, was finally at ease. The most important matter had been resolved. Next, it was time to deal with the subsequent troubles. She looked at Elder Ouyang with a helpless expression, but her eyes were clear. Elder Ouyang, I know I was wrong. No matter what, it was always good to admit his mistake first. However, Elder Ouyang already had experience, so he did not fall for her trick at all. With one hand behind his back, he snorted coldly. You know you were wrong. This old man didn't see it at all. Chu Yu, this is not the first time you broke the rules and barged into Thousand Wine Mountain, right? This old man remembers that it has only been a month since you were locked up in Pengmin Mountain for 10 days. Not to mention that you were also locked up in the middle of the month because of other mistakes. What, are you uncomfortable if you don't cause trouble for a day? Elder Ouyang said angrily. You really don't learn from your mistakes. Chu Luyue waited for him to scold her before explaining herself in a low voice. Elder Ouyang, this student really didn't mean it. You also saw the situation just now. That divine weapon needs to be tempered, so this student can only come here. And after coming here, it directly went out of control, which led to the following things. Don't give me that. Elder Ouyang irritably interrupted Chu Liyue's words and only felt a headache. Don't you know what level of strength you have now? You actually want to use your own strength to temper the soul of this divine weapon now. Do you think that you have been living too well during this period of time, or are you really not afraid of death? If something really happened, no one would be able to help her. Chu Liyue heaved a sigh of relief in her heart. Although Elder Ouyang's words were harsh, he still considered her in his heart. Moreover, if he really didn't like her, he wouldn't have helped her without reservation just now. In the end, he still had a sharp tongue but a soft heart. Chu Liyue smiled at Elder Ouyang. Isn't this student fine? Elder, although this student is young and inexperienced, I also know that life is precious and I don't dare to joke about this kind of thing. If he really didn't have the slightest confidence and urged her to come, she wouldn't have agreed. Elder Ouyang choked. What she said was not without reason. After all, whoever obtained such a treasure would not think too much about it. But it was still too dangerous. What, do you think that with Rongxiu around, you will be safe? Chu Liyue was silent for a moment and nodded seriously. Yes. You, Elder Ouyang felt even more choked. Rongxiu's lips slightly curved into a perfect arc, and he chuckled. Elder Ouyang, since I brought her here, I will naturally bring her back in one piece. You. Elder Ouyang flicked his sleeve. This interrogation couldn't continue. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1248. Elder Ouyang couldn't ask the two of them anymore, so he simply changed his target. Shang Yusin. What's wrong with you? Rongxiu was fooling around with Chu Yu. Who was he? How could he help the tyrant? But Shang Yusin was really not afraid of Elder Ouyang. Hearing this, he crossed his arms and said lazily, Didn't you see it just now? Help him. Didn't you see what he's holding in his hand? He had been thinking about Scarlet Heaven's sword for many years, but he couldn't see it. Now that he finally had the chance, it had already recognized Chu Yu as its master. Of course, he was unwilling. But what could he do? A divine weapon of this level would not easily recognize a master. Even if he had been thinking about it for many years, he didn't dare to have such extravagant hopes. From the beginning to the end, he was just thinking about waiting for Scarlet Heaven's sword to be born. After it was brought back to the academy, he could seize the opportunity to observe and study it closely. Now, it had become Chu Yu's divine weapon. Other than the word opportunity, there was no other way to describe it. Chu Yu wanted to refine the weapon's soul for it. How could he just watch and ignore it? After all, he had been thinking about it for many years, so he still had some thoughts in his heart. Even if it wasn't for Chu Yu, he had to do it for Scarlet Heaven's sword. Elder Ouyang felt uncomfortable all over. He closed his eyes and held his forehead with a headache. None of them were easy to deal with. However, it just so happened that these people were all eloquent, making it extremely difficult for him to even refute. Ouyang, there's no point in asking this now. Shang Yusin touched his chin. Didn't you participate just now? Elder Ouyang, if it wasn't for Shang Yusin urging him, would he have done this? It was his fault for being muddle-headed at that time. He actually helped. What you mean is that we're all in the same boat now. Shang Yusin looked at him strangely with an expression that said, aren't you talking nonsense? Elder Ouyang's eyebrows twitched violently. He felt that it was wrong for him to even think about communicating with them. Shang Yusin, he was not in the academy all year round. Whenever he came back, he would go into seclusion to cultivate. He had always been carefree and did things according to his mood. Rong Xiao, one of the most outstanding geniuses in the academy. His position in the academy was extremely high, and he had even more privileges than some of the elders. Chu Yu, there was nothing much to say about this. He was just an audacious brat. You've even taught me and made mistakes again. Elder Ouyang took a deep breath and tried to calm himself down. Shang Yusin, Bo Yan will know about what happened tonight sooner or later. Shang Yusin nodded. Of course he would know. The profound formation at the foot of the Thousand Wine Mountain and the surrounding barrier still had a portion of his power. However, this is nothing. He already knew that Scarlet Heaven's sword was in Chu Yu's hands. Refining the artifact's soul. Could it still be considered a mistake? If it was in my hands, I would have done the same. Shang Yusin said indifferently with a regretful expression. Unfortunately, I'm not that lucky. As he spoke, he looked at Chu Luyue. I've helped you today. How about lending this Scarlet Heaven sword to me for a day? Chu Luyue already knew that he had been concerned about Scarlet Heaven's sword for many years, so she nodded very straightforwardly. Chu will naturally repay Elder's kindness with gusto. Whenever you want it, just tell me. In any case, Scarlet Heaven's sword had already completely become hers. No one else could forcefully take it away from her, so there was nothing to worry about. Seeing that she was so straightforward, Shang Yusin instantly appreciated her a little more. Ha ha ha. Good. Just based on your words, I didn't help you for nothing today. As he spoke, he was so excited that he even reached out his hand, wanting to pat Chu Luyue's shoulder. Rong Xiao silently took a step forward and stood between the two of them, preventing Shang Yusin's fan-like palm from landing on him. Elder Ouyang, I actually brought junior brother Chu Yu here today. Everything happened because of me. I am willing to take all responsibility for this matter. Rong Xiao, Elder Ouyang had long expected that Rong Xiao would stand up for him, but when he really heard him say so, he couldn't help but be surprised. He really didn't understand why Rong Xiao was so protective of Chu Yu. But it had to be said that with Rong Xiao's appearance, this matter wouldn't be too serious. He took a deep look at Rong Xiao, shook his head, and sighed. You haven't set foot here for a few years. I never expected that this time, you actually. Halfway through his words, he stopped, as if he wanted to say something but hesitated. Rong Xiao's expression was the same as usual, and he smiled faintly. I haven't had time to thank you for today's matter. Elder Ouyang completely lost his temper. He looked around and furrowed his brows. On the top of the mountain, it was a mess. Countless mountains and forests had collapsed. Because of the bombardment of countless Tianlei, large patches of black appeared on the mountain rocks, and some even had deep cracks. It wasn't difficult for anyone to guess what had happened here. It seems that Wine Mountain has to be closed for a while. It would take a lot of effort to repair it. In the sky, the dark clouds gradually dissipated. It was already early in the morning, and a ray of white appeared on the horizon. It seemed that it would be daybreak soon. Let's go. Let's go see Bo Yen together. Elder Ouyang let out a long breath and took the lead to leave. Chu Luiyue turned back to look at the spring. Dumpling was still inside. She opened her mouth and was about to shout when a thought suddenly flashed through her mind. Kid, what are you looking at? Hurry up and follow. Elder Ouyang urged from the front. Chu Luiyue retracted her gaze. I'm coming. Her figure flashed, and she left with him, never looking back. In the spring at the top of the mountain, a ripple flashed across and disappeared in an instant. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1249. Donghuang Clock Tower. In the solemn hall, the air seemed to have frozen. Elder Bo Yen sat at the top without any expression on his face. Only his slightly clenched fists showed that he was not as calm as he appeared to be. In front of him stood the 4 people who just came out of Thousand Wine Mountain. That's the gist of it. Elder Ouyang explained the cause and effect of the incident, and his mouth was almost dry from all the talking. After that, the hall fell into dead silence again. After a while, Elder Bo Yen spoke slowly. So, you rushed here early in the morning because you guys destroyed half of Thousand Wine Mountain. Shang Yusin could not help but remind him. Mainly to help Chuyu refine Scarlet Cloud Sword's soul, the soul. Cough, it's just that some trees and rocks were destroyed, then. The spring is still fine. He did not say the last sentence, and even the words he said before became much softer under Elder Bo Yan's gaze. Those who knew Elder Bo Yen knew that he was rarely angry. But once he was angry, it was extremely difficult to deal with. Even Shang Yusin and Elder Ouyang, who had worked with him for many years, felt a chill. Chuyu, in that case, this matter was still caused by you. Chu Liuyue's shoulders drooped, and he lowered his head slightly. This student was rash and made a big mistake. Elder Bo Yen, please punish me. Of course you should be punished. Elder Bo Yen really did not know what to say. This Chuyu, just when I thought he would be obedient and stop, he kept causing new problems. And each time, it was more serious than the last. This time, he even implicated Shang Yusin and Ouyang. Right, there was also Rong Xiao. Elder Bo Yen, if I did not take the initiative today, junior brother Chu would definitely not go to Thousand Wine Mountain. Rong Xiao's tone was calm, but also very sincere. I promised you before that I would teach junior brother Chu well. So now, the person who should be punished is me. Elder Bo Yen was so angry that he laughed. You think I won't punish you? You can't get away with this matter. Rong Xiao, if you want to take on everything, you have to see if it's feasible, and if you can take on the responsibility. His gaze swept across the few of them. None of you can escape. What kind of place was the Thousand Wine Mountain? It's fine if Chuyu doesn't know, but the remaining 3 are very clear. Under such circumstances, they actually dared to do such a thing. They were simply trying to overturn the heavens. The 4 of them quieted down. Even Shang Yusin had lost his temper and stood there obediently. Elder Bo Yen closed his eyes. Who else knows about this? Elder Ouyang said, apart from the people in the hall, no one else knows. In other words, only Elder Bo Yen had received the news. This made Elder Bo Yen relax a little. If things got out of hand, it wouldn't be easy to clean up the mess. He fell into deep thought and began to consider how to punish these people. Time seemed to pass extremely slowly. Since Elder Bo Yen did not speak, the remaining 4 also remained silent. Finally, after a long while, Elder Bo Yen raised his head and looked at Chu Liyue. Chu Yu. Student is here. That artifact spirit has been refined successfully. Elder, it's done. Elder Bo Yen nodded. Although this matter was ridiculous, it wasn't completely fruitless. That divine artifact had already become Chu Yu's, and no one could snatch it away. Now that he was able to refine the artifact spirit and merge with it, it could be considered a fortunate thing. Although no one said anything about the divine artifact recognizing Chu Yu as its master, but in reality, there were quite a number of elders who were in the know who were extremely unhappy. In order to take back this artifact, the academy had prepared for a long time and put in a lot of effort. But in the end, it was taken by a new student who had just entered the academy for 2 months. Of course, they wouldn't be happy about it. But because this matter had already happened and couldn't be changed, they could only accept it. Only when Chu Yu took out his strength to prove himself, would he be able to convince those people. Elder Bo Yen actually thought highly of Chu Yu, and because of this, he gave him chances time and time again. Even if Chu Yu had violated the rules a few times, he still stood on Chu Yu's side. This time, Chu Yu had gone overboard, but he couldn't really do anything to him. After thinking about it for a long time, the only good news was that he had managed to refine a weapon soul. Elder Bo Yen comforted himself as he waved at Chu Liyue. Alright, you can go back first. Later, I will discuss with your master and see what kind of punishment we should give you. Chu Liyue's thoughts moved slightly, and she instantly guessed that Elder Bo Yen had something to say to the other 3, so she tactfully took her leave. Yes. She bowed, then quickly turned and left the hall. Her actions were clean and tidy, without the slightest bit of sloppiness. Until her figure completely disappeared outside the door, Elder Bo Yen then looked at the remaining 3 people in front of him. His brows slowly creased, and his voice became more serious. This time, did it involve the spring eye? No. Elder Ouyang immediately said. At that time, all of us were above the mountain peak, and there was still some distance from the spring eye. In fact, the Tianlei had been swallowed by the Scarlet Heaven Sword, and other than some remnant energy waves that caused some damage to the surroundings, everything else was fine. Of course, this was ignoring Chu Yu's last unconscious strike. That's good. However, I will still personally check it later. Elder Bo Yen said. Regarding this, the 3 of them had no objections. The spring eye was of great importance, and it was normal for Elder Bo Yen to be so cautious. This matter must be kept a secret, and no one else can know about it. If one more person knew, it would be more troublesome. Although your actions today were pardonable. However, this punishment cannot be avoided. Elder Bo Yen looked at the 3 of them. Think about it yourselves, what should we do about this? The sky gradually brightened. When Chu Liyue walked out of the Donghuang Bell Tower, it was already morning. However, there were not many people in the Qingming Square at this time, so no one saw her walk out. Chu Liyue looked back at the closed door, pursed her lips, and then turned to leave, heading straight for Jiuheng Mountain. When Chu Liyue returned to Jiuheng Mountain, she felt that something was wrong the moment she landed. She paused for a moment, but still walked forward. When she opened the door, she saw a familiar face. Dugu Mabao was sitting upright, and when he heard the sound, he looked up. Chu Liyue called out to him, but when she met that pair of demonic purple eyes, she inexplicably felt a little guilty. Dugu Mabao just looked at her quietly. You went to Thousand Wine Mountain during the ban again. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from LoveNet. Chapter 1250. Chu Liyue sighed in her heart. She knew that nothing could be hidden from him. Dugu Mabao seemed to have countless pairs of eyes in the academy. No matter what happened, he could always quickly and clearly understand it. Chu Luiyue had long felt that this matter was too strange, but she had never been able to get an answer. Just like now. Last night on Thousand Wine Mountain, there were indeed only the four of them. With the protection and concealment of the barrier outside the mountain, no one outside knew about it. Logically speaking, other than the four of them, Elder Bo Yen should be the only one who knew about this. And they were the ones who took the initiative to confess to Elder Bo Yen. Dugu Mabao's guess was so accurate. It really didn't make sense. Yes. Chu Luiyue chose to tell the truth. She didn't think that she had the ability to deceive Dugu Mabao. Dugu Mabao frowned slightly, and the look in his eyes became dangerous. Have you forgotten what I told you before? Of course, Chu Luiyue didn't forget. At that time, it was because Dugu Mabao made it clear that she was not allowed to enter Thousand Wine Mountain at that time that she obediently obeyed until now. Even if Dumpling stared at the spring and refused to leave every time, she never stayed there for too long. The situation today is indeed a little special, Chu Luiyue explained helplessly. I went to refine my weapon soul. Dugu Mabao snorted and turned his head away. Even if you don't go to Thousand Wine Mountain, there are other ways. There are many mountains where the weapon refiners are, and there are a few of them overseeing it. It's the same if you go to them. Why do you have to do this? Chu Luiyue's eyelids twitched. Debao. Do you think that I can take this path? Since the first day she entered the academy, she had already heard many rumors about the weapon refiners. They were arrogant, unsociable, cold, and rarely came out even once in a year. She didn't even have enough time to admire them. How could they think of such a solution? Although she was bold and occasionally acted presumptuously, it didn't mean that she didn't know her limits. Dugu Mabao choked. Of course you. His voice stopped abruptly, and a complicated emotion flashed through his eyes. Chu Luiyue did not see the change in his expression clearly, but she could tell that something was amiss with his tone. She could not help but ask curiously, of course, what's wrong with me? Dugu Mabao closed his eyes. When he opened them again, his eyes had regained their clarity. It's nothing. I was careless. Chu Luiyue frowned slightly. She still felt that Dugu Mabao's answer was a little strange, but she couldn't put her finger on it. Even if you can't do it, Rongxiu can. However, he brought you directly to Thousand Wine Mountain. Humph. Dugu Mabao sneered. Rongxiu thought that the situation was not chaotic enough. Chu Luiyue lowered her eyes slightly and didn't reply. She hadn't thought of this before, but Rongxiu was the number one on the Green Cloud ranking. How could she have forgotten about this? Judging from the polite attitude of the elders in the academy towards Rongxiu, if he personally came forward, it might not be impossible to invite him. However, just as Dugu Mabao said, he didn't do so. However, this was understandable. After all, it was best not to owe favors. Relatively speaking, it was much more troublesome to ask those senior refiners for help than to go to Thousand Wine Mountain directly. Even though Rongxiu might face quite a bit of punishment if he chose the latter, Rongxiu definitely had his own considerations before he made this choice. Chu Luiyue thought for a moment, then walked over with an earnest smile. Debao, don't be angry. This matter is already in the past, isn't it? Not only did I come back safely, but I also successfully tempered the weapon's soul. Even if I receive a little punishment, the benefits definitely outweigh the disadvantages. Dugu Mabao didn't say anything. How was he going to explain to her that he wasn't just worried about this? After pausing for a moment, Dugu Mabao finally shook his head. If there's a next time, I won't let you off. Chu Luiyue smiled, her eyes curved. All right. Dugu Mabao's gaze swept across her face, opened his mouth, and finally said, since the weapon's soul has been tempered, you should study and cultivate more. There are very few venerable artifacts in the world. It's a great honor for you to be able to obtain one. You must cultivate well. Chu Luiyue nodded vigorously. Definitely. After spending so much effort, if she couldn't make the best use of it, wouldn't it be a huge loss? Dugu Mabao nodded and immediately stood up to leave. Chu Luiyue couldn't help but say, "De Bao, are you leaving now? Aren't you going to stay a little longer?" Dugu Mabao stopped in his tracks. "I'll be back in the evening." Chu Luiyue frowned slightly. Ever since they came to Lingxiao College, she almost never spent too much time with Dugu Mabao during the day. His daily training was also held between evening and night. It was as if he had other important things to do at other times. But in the Lingxiao Academy, what kind of things did he need to do every day? "De Bao, when you're not with me, where are you?" Chu Luiyue finally couldn't help but ask. "If I want to look for you, I don't even know where to go." Dugu Mabao turned around and glanced at her, his face expressionless. He said calmly, "You don't have to look for me. If you're in trouble in the college, I'll rush over." After saying that, he directly lifted his feet and left. Chu Luiyue's frown deepened. De Bao. What secret was he hiding? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1251. Chu Luiyue stayed anxiously in her residence for a while. In the afternoon, news came from the academy: Thousand Wine Mountain would be closed for maintenance for a month. The students were very surprised. After all, although Thousand Wine Mountain had a ban every day, it had never been closed for a month. Everyone was discussing this and coming up with all sorts of guesses. But in reality, even many elders were confused about this. It was still fine yesterday, but today, it was inexplicably going into seclusion for quite some time. It was really strange. But many elders knew that Thousand Wine Mountain was not an ordinary place, so they did not ask much. Although the students regretted that they lost a place to relax, it was only for a month, so they accepted it naturally. Of course, it was meaningless if they did not accept it. Chu Luiyue wanted to go out for a walk and then go to Thousand Wine Mountain to see Dumpling, but after thinking about it, she gave up. Now, she could only hope that Dumpling could safely pass the month in Thousand Wine Mountain. After temporarily putting this matter aside, Chu Luiyue began to wait for Rongxiu to return. At the same time, she was waiting for the punishment she was about to face. She was not naive enough to think that she could escape. From Elder Bo Yan's reaction, this was the angriest he had ever been, and he would not let it go so easily. One must know that the last time he knew that she had taken the Scarlet Heaven sword for herself, he did not show such an expression. This showed how important Thousand Wine Mountain was. This also made Chu Luiyue even more certain that there was a huge secret related to the academy hidden in the spring at the top of Thousand Wine Mountain. Chu Luiyue could not think of what the academy would do to her. Although Elder Wanzheng and Rongxiu were helping her, she instinctively felt that her fate would not be good. They waited all the way until nightfall. But the one who returned was not Rongxiu, but Elder Wenxi. Chu Yu. Elder Wenxi stood outside the barrier and placed his green jade token on it. At the same time, he called out Chu Luiyue's name. Chu Luiyue, who had been waiting quietly in the room, immediately got up and walked out when he heard the noise. She saw Elder Wenxi outside the barrier at a glance. At this moment, he was looking at her with a complicated gaze with one hand behind his back. Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat, and he unconsciously slowed down his steps. "Elder Wenxi, why are you here?" Elder Wenxi didn't say anything. He just looked at her like that, as if he was probing, puzzled, and conflicted. After a long while, he said, "Come out first." "Oh." Chu Luiyue said, then walked out of the barrier, and then stood in front of Elder Wenxi. Did you get into trouble again? Elder Wensi tried to make his voice sound calm, but in fact, everyone could hear the suppressed emotions in it. Chu Luiyue hesitated for a moment before nodding. Elder Wensi held his forehead, not knowing what to say. Didn't you just come out from Pengmin Mountain? Ah. Why is he causing trouble again? It had been a long time since he saw Bo Yan's expression. What was even more shocking was that this time, it seemed to have implicated Rong Xiu, as well as Shang Yusin and Ouyang, those two old fellows. You're really getting more and more capable. Tell me, what did you do to make Bo Yan so angry? Chu Luiyue immediately understood. It seemed that Elder Wensi didn't know about this matter. Although Elder Bo Yan was angry, he still chose to suppress this matter. On one hand, it might be because this matter involved a lot of people, and on the other hand, it might be to protect the secret of Thousand Wine Mountain. But Chu Luiyue had no way of knowing about this. She pursed her lips and asked carefully, Elder Wensi, Rong Xiu, and the others. How are they? You still have the mood to ask them. You can't even protect yourself now. Elder Wensi finally couldn't help but pat the back of Chu Luiyue's head. But considering that the child was still young and looked pitiful, he couldn't bear to hit her too hard. Chu Luiyue hissed, holding her head and looking at him pitifully. Elder Wensi's heart softened at first, then he shuddered. Pooey. What pitiful. This kid knew that he was amenable to coaxing but not coercion, so he deliberately looked at him like that. It must be. If he really didn't do anything, why would Bo Yan have such a reaction? Unfortunately, Bo Yan seemed to have made up his mind to block the news, and only told him to bring Chu Yu over, but didn't mention the reason. He could only speculate in his heart. But no matter how he thought about it, he couldn't figure out what this kid did to involve so many powerful people. Elder Wensi felt a chill run down his spine, and looked at Chu Luiyue warily. This kid, could it be that one day in the future, he would sell him out as well? They will deal with it themselves, you don't have to worry about it. Right now, Wanzhang is discussing with Bo Yan how to deal with you in the Donghuang Bell Tower. Wanzhang wants you to be there no matter what, so he asked me to bring you over first. Chu Luiyue's heart warmed slightly. Elder Wanzhang should have known about this by now, but he insisted on this request because he was concerned about her. She nodded. Thank you, Elder Wensi. Elder Wensi snorted. Let's go. As the elder who recruited Chu Yu, although he wasn't his master, he still had some responsibility. At first, he only felt happy and excited that he had recruited such a rare genius. But now, why did he feel like he had been cheated? And the longer Chu Yu stayed in the academy, the more obvious this feeling became. Elder Wensi couldn't help but sigh when he thought of this. Why did he have to deal with all these troublesome people? Arriving at the Donghuang Bell Tower again and entering the hall, Chu Luiyue clearly felt that the atmosphere was different from before. I've brought him. Elder Wensi said. Chu Luiyue quickly looked up to take a look. In the huge hall, Elder Bo Yan and Elder Wanzhang were sitting there. Other than them, Rong Xiu and the other two were no longer there. She retracted her gaze and bowed respectfully. Student Chu Yu greets Elder Bo Yan and Master. Elder Bo Yan gave Elder Wensi a look. Elder Wensi understood tacitly. Then you guys go ahead, I still have something to do, so I'll leave first. With that, he turned and left. When his figure completely disappeared outside the door, Chu Luiyue immediately felt that the atmosphere in the room had become tense. Even the air seemed to have started to condense. Two pairs of eyes that seemed to have materialized landed on her body. It was as if a sharp knife had scraped past her. Chu Yu, Bo Yan said that you caused trouble in Thousand Wine Mountain again, is that true? Elder Wanzhang asked in a low voice. Chu Luiyue nodded honestly. Student is at fault. Elder Wanjing took a deep breath. Elder Bo Yen snorted. Wanjing, he admitted it himself, what else do you want to explain for him? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.